Are you excited? Sweet pea, Dr. Maya Reynolds asked, her voice a warm, low counterpoint to the airport's din. She squeezed her niece's small hand as they navigated through Chicago O'Hare's Terminal 3, a human river of rolling suitcases and hurried travelers. 9-year-old Amara Harper looked up, her intelligent brown eyes reflecting the fluorescent lights overhead.
I understand
A
the
thoughtful
stakes,
frown
but
creased
their
her brow as
valuation
she
seems
considered the
inflated.
question. I'm excited to see Grandma and Grandpa, she said finally. And the ocean, but I don't like the takeoff part. It feels like my tummy is trying to escape through my ears. Maya chuckled, pulling Amara closer as they sidestepped a businessman sprinting toward his gate. I know the feeling, but think of it this way. For a few minutes of funny tummy feelings, you get to soar above the clouds like a superhero, and I made sure you have the best seat in the house to watch it all happen. The air in Chicago O'Hare was a familiar symphony of chaos, a frantic orchestra of announcements, beeping carts, and the low, anxious hum of thousands of intersecting journeys. For Dr. Maya Reynolds, it was just background noise. Her focus remained singular, resting on the small hand tucked securely in hers. Flight 937 to San Francisco. Scheduled departure 10:45 a.m. from Gate 17 is currently on time, announced a robotic voice over the PA system. Maya checked the boarding passes on her phone again. Seats 14A and 14B, a window seat for Amara, and an aisle seat for herself. She'd paid the extra $78 seat selection fee 3 months ago to ensure Amara would have the perfect view for her first flight to California. It was a small price for the joy it would bring her niece. This was a special trip. Maya, a pediatric cardiologist with a demanding schedule at Northwestern Memorial, had carved out 10 precious days to take her niece from their home in Chicago to visit her parents in Sausalito, just across the Golden Gate Bridge from San Francisco. Amara's father, Maya's brother-in-law, Richard Harper, was consumed by a corporate merger in New York and couldn't get away. He had entrusted Maya with his most precious cargo, a trust she took as seriously as any open-heart surgery. How long until we get there? Amara asked, skipping slightly to keep pace with Maya's longer strides. Well, the flight is about 4 hours, Maya explained, and then we'll have to get our bags and drive across the Golden Gate Bridge to Grandma and Grandpa's house. So maybe 6 hours total. Amara's face scrunched up as she did the mental calculation. That's a long time. I packed some surprises to keep you entertained, Maya assured her, patting her carry-on bag. And we'll get a special snack before we board. Maya had meticulously planned every aspect of this trip, from their seating arrangements to their in-flight entertainment. In surgery, preparation meant the difference between life and death. In travel, it meant the difference between stress and serenity. They stopped at a cafe near their gate, where Maya ordered Amara's favorite chocolate muffin and a black coffee for herself. As they sat at a small table, Maya watched her niece savor each bite, chocolate smudging the corner of her mouth. Amara's resemblance to her mother, Maya's late sister Olivia, was striking. The same thoughtful eyes, the same delicate hands. Maya felt the familiar pang of loss, quickly followed by the fierce protectiveness that had defined their relationship since Olivia's death 3 years ago. You have chocolate? Maya pointed to the corner of her own mouth. Amara quickly wiped hers with a napkin, grinning. Around them, the airport continued its chaotic dance. Business people tapped frantically on laptops. Families corralled exhausted children. Airline staff made announcements that were immediately swallowed by the general cacophony. But at their small table, Maya and Amara existed in a bubble of calm. Maya's phone buzzed. A text from her father: flight on time, mom's making your favorite dinner. She typed back, all on schedule, ETA 4:15 p.m. your time. Tell mom not to go overboard. We're only staying for 10 days, not moving in. Her father's reply came quickly. You know your mother. She's already baked 3 kinds of cookies for Amara. Maya smiled, showing the message to Amara, whose eyes widened with delight. 3 kinds. Do you think she made the ones with the chocolate chunks? Knowing Grandma, definitely, Maya assured her. Plus those peanut butter ones you like. The time passed quickly. As they finished their snacks and headed to the gate, Maya noticed Amara was quieter, a little more reserved, a telltale sign of her pre-flight anxiety. She squeezed her niece's hand reassuringly. You know what I always tell my patients before a big procedure? Maya asked. Amara looked up, curious. What? Brave doesn't mean not being scared. Brave means doing something even when you are scared. A small smile formed on Amara's lips. Like flying, exactly like flying, and you, Amara Harper, are one of the bravest people I know. The pride in Amara's eyes was worth every vacation day Maya had saved for this trip. Now boarding SkyWest Airlines Flight 937 to San Francisco, announced the gate agent. We'll begin with our Diamond Elite members, followed by Platinum Elite, families with small children, and active military personnel. Maya checked their boarding passes. We're in Group 2. That's coming up next. Amara's small backpack, decorated with planets and stars, bounced against her back as she shifted from foot to foot, excitement now overtaking anxiety. Maya carried her own leather tote, containing her tablet loaded with medical journals, a novel she'd been trying to finish for months, and a small bag of surprises for Amara. Colored pencils, a new sketch pad, and a few small puzzles to keep her occupied during the 4-hour flight. As they waited to board, Maya noticed a blonde woman in an expensive cream-colored suit arguing with the gate agent, her voice carrying above the general murmur of the crowd. "This is completely unacceptable," the woman was saying. "My husband is a Diamond Elite member. We always get priority seating." The gate agent was patiently explaining something about reservation systems and seat assignments, but the woman seemed unwilling to accept whatever she was being told. Beside her stood a boy around Amara's age, staring at an iPad with the vacant expression of someone who spends too much time looking at screens. His designer clothes and bored demeanor mirrored his mother's sense of entitlement. "Group 2, you may now board Flight 937 to San Francisco," called the gate agent, momentarily abandoning the confrontation with the blonde woman. Maya guided Amara forward. "Boarding passes ready. Here we go. Sweet pea. Adventure awaits." As they passed the frustrated woman, Maya caught her eye briefly. Something in the woman's expression, a flash of disdain, a quick up and down assessment, sent a chill of foreboding down Maya's spine. She had seen that look before, the look of someone sizing up another person and finding them wanting based solely on appearance. Maya pushed the thought aside as they entered the jet bridge. Today was about Amara's first trip to California, not about the petty judgments of strangers. Little did she know that this chance encounter was about to escalate into something much more serious, a confrontation that would test her patience, challenge her principles, and ultimately spark a chain of events with far-reaching consequences. "Excuse me, but I think you're in our seats." Maya looked up from helping Amara arrange her backpack under the seat in front of her. Standing in the aisle was the blonde woman from the gate, mid-40s, immaculately dressed in a cream-colored Chanel suit that looked far too expensive for commercial air travel. Her blonde hair was styled into a sleek bob, not a strand out of place. A Cartier watch glinted on her wrist, complementing a tennis bracelet that probably cost more than most passengers' monthly rent. Beside her stood the boy, still clutching his iPad Pro, his expression now one of practiced impatience rather than just boredom. Maya offered a polite, professional smile, the one she used with anxious parents before explaining a complex diagnosis. "I don't believe so," she replied calmly. "We're in 14A and 14B." She gestured to their boarding passes displayed on her phone screen. The woman, whose name Maya would later learn was Victoria Whitfield, didn't glance at the evidence. Her eyes remained fixed on Amara, then on the window, as if the child were a temporary obstruction to her rightful view. "My son Ethan always sits at the window," she stated, not as a request, but as an announcement of an unchangeable fact of the universe. "His father is a Diamond Elite member. We specifically requested a window seat." "I'm sure you did," Maya replied, her voice still even. "But this particular window seat, 14A, was booked and paid for by me. Perhaps your seats are across the aisle or in another row." Victoria's lips thinned into a razor line, and a slight flush appeared on her perfectly made-up cheeks. "No, I specifically booked a window and an aisle in this section. My son needs the window. He gets anxious otherwise." Ethan, the supposedly anxious son, let out an impatient sigh. "Mom, just make them move. I want to see the wing." He didn't look up from his iPad, where he was playing a game with the volume too high. His fingers tapped aggressively at the screen, each touch punctuated with the digital sound of something exploding. The crudeness of the boy's demand sent a small spark of anger through Maya's calm exterior. She looked from Victoria's entitled glare to Ethan's petulant frown. She recognized the pathology instantly, a severe case of unbridled privilege. "I'm sorry your son is anxious," Maya said, her tone hardening slightly. "But these are our assigned seats. We paid for them, and Amara is quite comfortable where she is." Amara, sensing the tension, had pulled back from the window. She was no longer watching the ground crew loading baggage. She was watching the confrontation, her small shoulders tensing. She looked at Maya, a question in her eyes. Victoria scoffed, a short, sharp sound of disbelief. "It's a child. She can sit in the aisle. What difference does it make?" Her voice dropped to a condescending whisper. Though still loud enough for Amara to hear, "It would be so much easier if you would just cooperate. We don't want to hold up the entire flight over a silly seat, do we?" The phrase "it would be easier" was a red flag for Maya. It was the language of bullies and bureaucrats, the justification for taking the path of least resistance, which was so often the path of least justice. "The difference," Maya said, her voice now dangerously quiet, "is that I chose this seat for my niece. She is happy in this seat, and we will be remaining in this seat. I'm sure a flight attendant can help you find your assigned seats." With that, she turned slightly away, a clear dismissal. It was a move that in a hospital boardroom or a medical conference would have ended the conversation. But this was not a boardroom. Victoria's face flushed a deeper red. She wasn't used to being denied. Her hand tightened on the strap of her designer handbag, a Hermes Birkin that cost more than many people's monthly salary. "Do you have any idea who my husband is?" Victoria hissed, lowering her voice but increasing its intensity. "He flies over 100,000 miles a year with SkyWest. One call from him, and one call from him won't change the fact that these are our assigned seats," Maya interrupted calmly. "Seat assignments aren't determined by who your husband is." A young Hispanic woman across the aisle, Lisa Rodriguez, according to the company lanyard around her neck, had discreetly taken out her phone and was recording the interaction. She caught Maya's eye and gave her a subtle nod of support. "These new tickets are impossible to understand," Victoria said loudly, clearly for the benefit of surrounding passengers. "The seat assignments are so confusing. I'm sure there's been a mistake." A man behind them sighed audibly. "Can we get this sorted quickly? Some of us need to make connections in San Francisco." Victoria seized on this support. "Exactly, we're holding up everyone." She turned to Amara directly, her voice shifting to a saccharine sweetness that was somehow more offensive than her previous tone. "Sweetie, you wouldn't want to make all these people late, would you? Why don't you be a good girl and let my son have the window? He really needs it." Maya's protective instincts flared. The condescension in Victoria's tone, the manipulation, the utter disregard for Amara as a person with feelings and rights, it was all too familiar. It was the same attitude she had encountered throughout her career, the assumption that she should yield, should accommodate, should make herself smaller to make room for others' entitlement. "Please don't speak to my niece," Maya said, her voice quiet but firm. "If you have concerns about your seating assignment, please speak to a flight attendant." Victoria's fake smile vanished. "Fine," she turned, scanning the aisle for a crew member. "Flight attendant," she called, her voice sharp enough to cut through the cabin chatter. "Flight attendant, there's a problem here." Heads turned. The low hum of boarding passengers quieted in their immediate vicinity. Lisa Rodriguez across the aisle continued recording, recognizing that this situation was escalating into something worth documenting. A flight attendant with a tight, weary expression and a name tag that read Jennifer bustled over, her face already a mask of practiced problem-solving. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a severe bun, and her makeup was flawlessly applied, though her eyes betrayed the fatigue of someone who had already handled multiple passenger issues before this flight had even departed. "What seems to be the trouble here, ma'am?" she asked, directing the question solely to Victoria. Maya watched with a cold knot forming in her stomach. Jennifer hadn't even looked at her or Amara. The battle lines were being drawn, and the airline representative had already chosen a side. "There seems to be a confusion with the seat assignments," Victoria said, her voice now calm and reasonable, as if she were the adult in the situation. "My son and I were assigned these window and aisle seats, but these people are refusing to move." Jennifer finally turned to Maya and Amara, her expression already tinged with annoyance. "Ma'am, could I see your boarding passes? Please." Maya displayed her phone screen again, showing their confirmed seats 14A and 14B. "And yours, ma'am," Jennifer asked Victoria. Victoria fumbled in her purse, eventually producing a crumpled paper boarding pass. Jennifer examined it, frowning slightly. "Ma'am, your seats are actually 16C and 16D. That's 2 rows back, on the aisle and middle." Victoria's expression didn't change. "That can't be right. I specifically requested window seats. My husband is a Diamond Elite member." "I understand, ma'am, but these are the seats assigned to you." Jennifer's voice took on a placating tone. "Sometimes during peak travel times, not all seat preferences can be accommodated." Victoria's jaw tightened. "This is unacceptable. My son needs the window seat. He gets anxious in flight." She lowered her voice, though not enough to prevent those nearby from hearing. "Surely you can see that moving these people would be the simplest solution. The girl is small. She can sit anywhere." Jennifer hesitated, glancing between Victoria and Maya. Maya could see the mental calculation happening, a high-status frequent flyer versus a woman and child who, while in the right, might be easier to pressure into compliance. "Well, Durham," Jennifer began, her voice uncertain. "Our seats are 14A and 14B. Maya reiterated firmly. "We selected them specifically and paid the seat selection fee. We will not be moving." Lisa Rodriguez was now openly recording, her phone held at eye level. The small screen displayed a social media live stream interface, with comments already beginning to appear. "SkyWest flight attendant siding with entitled passenger." Read the caption. Other passengers had begun to take notice. An older man across the aisle muttered, "Just figure it out already." While a young woman in the row behind them watched with open curiosity, Ethan, seemingly bored with the conflict, had returned his attention to his iPad game, the sound of digital explosions punctuating the tense exchange. Victoria placed a manicured hand on his shoulder protectively, as if Maya and Amara were somehow threatening him. "Jennifer," Victoria said, using the flight attendant's name to establish familiarity. "My husband flies with SkyWest every week. We're loyal customers. Surely there's something you can do to help us." The invocation of status and loyalty had its intended effect. Jennifer's posture changed subtly, becoming more deferential to Victoria. "Let me see what I can do," she said. She turned to Maya, her tone shifting to one of appeal. "Ma'am, would it be possible for you and your daughter to—" "Niece," Maya corrected automatically. "I'm sorry, you and your niece, to consider moving to seats 16C and 16D. It would really help us resolve this situation quickly." Lisa's livestream viewer count had reached 157, with comments ranging from "stand your ground" to "this is how it always goes." Maya felt a flash of indignation. The flight attendant was asking them to give up their rightfully assigned seats and move to worse ones, all to accommodate someone who was clearly in the wrong. "No," Maya said simply. "We are in our assigned seats. We paid for these specific seats. There is nothing to resolve except helping this woman find her actual seats." Victoria made a sound of exasperation. "Do you see what I'm dealing with? Jennifer, this level of inflexibility is ridiculous." The live stream count jumped to 342 viewers. Comments flowing faster now. "Classic entitlement. Why should they move? That flight attendant needs to do her job." The young woman who had been recording the interaction spoke up unexpectedly. "Actually, they're right. They have their assigned seats. Why should they move?" Victoria shot her a venomous look. "No one asked for your input." "Ma'am, bow, please," Jennifer said to Victoria, now clearly uncomfortable with the escalating situation and the recording devices capturing it all. "Let me check if there are any other window seats available." She stepped away to consult her tablet, leaving an awkward silence in her wake. Victoria remained standing in the aisle, blocking other boarding passengers, who were now forced to squeeze past her. Amara leaned close to Maya. "Should I move?" "Auntie Maya," she whispered, her voice small with anxiety. Maya's heart ached at the question. Amara was already preparing to make herself smaller, to accommodate, to take the path of least resistance. It was a lesson Maya had fought against her entire life, the expectation that she should yield her space, her rights, her dignity for the comfort of others. "No, sweet pea," Maya said firmly, loud enough for Victoria to hear. "You don't need to move. This is your seat. You belong here." Jennifer returned, her expression grim. I'm afraid we don't have any other window seats available on this flight. It's completely full. Victoria's face darkened with anger. This is completely unacceptable. I want to speak to your supervisor immediately. The storm that had been gathering at the gate was about to break right here in the narrow confines of row 14. Jennifer Morgan possessed the harried energy of someone who had already dealt with 3 delays and a lost catering cart before this flight had even boarded. She listened with a sympathetic, nodding expression as Victoria Whitfield laid out her grievances, her voice a carefully curated blend of victimhood and authority. And I explained that my son needs the window. He's a nervous flyer, Victoria embellished, gesturing toward Ethan, who was now engrossed in his tablet game, looking anything but nervous. His face was illuminated by the screen, his expression one of intense concentration as he tapped through what appeared to be some kind of combat game. I am a Platinum Elite member, and my husband is Diamond Elite. We have a certain expectation of service. She lowered her voice conspiratorially, though still loud enough for Maya and Amara to hear clearly. This woman, she said, waving a dismissive hand toward Maya, is being utterly unreasonable. She's making a scene. Lisa Rodriguez's live stream viewer count had reached 1,200, with comments flooding in faster than they could be read. SkyWest Airlines, you need to see this, read one. This is why I stopped flying with them. Read another. Maya remained silent, letting the absurdity of the accusation hang in the air. She was the one sitting calmly while Victoria was the one shouting for an attendant. But Jennifer's eyes, when they finally turned to Maya, were not questioning. They were pleading. Ma'am, Jennifer began, her voice strained with forced politeness. We do need to get the flight out on time. For the sake of a smooth departure, would it be possible for the little girl to switch to another seat? It's just 1 row over. The framing of the request was insidious. It positioned Maya as the obstacle, the source of the delay, the unreasonable one. It completely ignored the fact that they were in their rightfully assigned seats. With all due respect, Maya replied, her voice low and firm, that's not a solution. We selected and paid for seats 14A and 14B. My niece is settled. I see no reason why we should be the ones to move. She met Jennifer's gaze directly. Could you please help Mrs. Whitfield find her assigned seats so we can all get settled? Jennifer's face tightened. This was not the quick, easy capitulation she had hoped for. She glanced at Victoria, then back at Maya. Her internal calculus was painfully obvious. On one side was an angry, high-status frequent flyer, likely to file a lengthy, vitriolic complaint. On the other was a quiet black woman with a child. In the biased arithmetic of conflict avoidance, Maya and Amara were the easier problem to solve. Ma'am, I understand, but sometimes there are seating duplications in the system, Jennifer fabricated, her voice taking on a patronizing, explanatory tone. The simplest way to resolve this right now is to just make a small switch. We can't have this discussion holding up the entire plane. Amara, who had been trying to make herself as small as possible, whispered, Auntie Maya, it's okay. I can move. Her voice was a tiny, heartbreaking squeak of concession. Lisa Rodriguez's live stream had reached 2,100 viewers. Her caption had changed to SkyWest flight attendant pressuring black child to give up assigned seat. Comments were pouring in. This is exactly what happens to us all the time. Stand your ground, sis. SkyWest, are you seeing this? This is why I drive instead of flying. Maya noticed the recording but focused on Jennifer. There is no system duplication. I have our confirmations right here. She displayed her phone again, showing their seat assignments. The issue is that this passenger wants something that doesn't belong to her. As an airline employee, your role should be to enforce the rules, not to ask rule-abiding passengers to inconvenience themselves for those who are breaking them. The directness of the challenge left Jennifer flustered. Her professional veneer cracked slightly. Ma'am, I am trying to de-escalate the situation. This situation was created by one person and is being escalated by you, Maya corrected calmly. Asking us to move is not de-escalation, it's capitulation. Victoria, seeing her advantage slipping, interjected loudly. This is ridiculous. I have never been treated this way. Are you going to do something or not? The pressure mounted. Other passengers were now openly staring. A man in the row behind them grumbled, For God's sake, just move so we can leave. Another passenger across the aisle muttered, Why should they move? They have their seats. The cabin was dividing into factions, and the brewing conflict was delaying boarding as other passengers were forced to navigate around Victoria. Still standing stubbornly in the aisle, Lisa Rodriguez's live stream had now reached 3,700 viewers. Her camera captured Jennifer's increasingly flustered expression as she realized this was no longer just an in-flight dispute. It was potentially viral content that could damage the airline's reputation. "Ma'am," Jennifer said to Victoria, making one last attempt at diplomacy, "I can offer you and your son premium snacks and complimentary beverages if you'll take your assigned seats." Victoria's eyes narrowed. "I don't want snacks. I want the window seat for my son." She leaned closer to Jennifer, her voice dropping but still audible to those nearby. "Do you know who my husband is, Bradley Whitfield, managing director at Morgan Stanley? He spent over $50,000 on SkyWest flights last year." The name drop and veiled threat hung in the air. Jennifer looked even more uncomfortable, caught between company policy and the fear of offending a high-value customer's wife. "I understand, Mrs. Whitfield, but the seat assignments system is—" "I don't care about your system," Victoria interrupted. "I care about my son having the window seat he needs. This should be a simple fix if you were doing your job properly." Jennifer's face flushed at the direct criticism. She turned back to Maya, her expression hardening. "Ma'am, as I explained, we need to get this flight out on time. Our on-time departure affects crew schedules, connecting passengers, and airport operations. I'm going to have to insist that you cooperate with us." Maya recognized the tactic: shift the blame, make her responsible for the delay, frame her reasonable stance as selfishness affecting hundreds of others. It was manipulation, pure and simple. "I am cooperating," Maya replied evenly. "I am sitting in my assigned seat, ready for departure. The delay is being caused by a passenger who refuses to sit in her assigned seat and by you enabling her behavior instead of enforcing your own airline's policies." The live stream comments were overwhelmingly supportive of Maya's stance. "She is so right. That flight attendant is completely out of line. Why are they making this her problem? SkyWest, you better fix this." Jennifer's cheeks flushed. She wasn't used to having her authority questioned so directly and eloquently, especially with an audience of thousands now watching online. She glanced nervously at Lisa's phone, still recording, and the gathering crowd of onlookers. "I need to get my supervisor," she muttered, backing away. Victoria took this as a victory. Finally, someone who will resolve this properly. She remained standing in the aisle, arms crossed, a smug expression on her face. Ethan hadn't looked up from his game once during the entire exchange. Maya could feel Amara trembling slightly beside her. She put a reassuring arm around her niece's shoulders, drawing her close. "It's okay, sweet pea," she whispered. "Sometimes we have to stand our ground when someone tries to push us around." Amara nodded, but her eyes were wide with anxiety. The excitement of the trip had been overshadowed by this ugly confrontation. A few minutes later, Jennifer returned with a taller, older man whose name tag identified him as Daniel Wilson, head flight attendant. His face was set in a grim expression as he assessed the situation. "What seems to be the issue here?" he asked, his voice carrying the practiced authority of someone who had mediated countless in-flight disputes. Jennifer quickly briefed him, though Maya noted that her explanation subtly favored Victoria's position, framing it as a seating misunderstanding rather than a passenger refusing to accept her assigned seat. Daniel turned to Maya, his expression stern. "Ma'am, I understand you're refusing to cooperate with our flight crew." Maya raised an eyebrow. "That's not accurate. I am sitting in my assigned seat, which I selected and paid for. I have shown my confirmation to your colleague. The issue is that this passenger," she nodded toward Victoria, "is refusing to accept her assigned seat and is demanding mine." Daniel looked at the boarding passes again, then at his tablet. "I see that you are indeed in your assigned seats," he acknowledged. "However, we have a passenger with status who has requested accommodation." The phrase "passenger with status" hung in the air, a naked admission of the preferential treatment at play. Lisa's live stream captured it perfectly, her camera zooming in slightly on Daniel's face as he spoke those revealing words. "My status," Maya said deliberately, "is that of a paying customer who followed your rules, made a reservation, and is now being asked to give up what I paid for to accommodate someone who didn't plan ahead." Lisa's live stream had now reached 5,800 viewers. Comments were flooding in. SkyWest Airlines needs to see this. They're really trying to make them move from their assigned seats. This is why I stopped flying with them. Daniel seemed to notice the recording for the first time, his expression darkening. Ma'am, he said to Lisa, recording other passengers without permission is against our policy. Lisa didn't lower her phone. I'm recording a situation in a public place where there's no expectation of privacy. It's completely legal. Her viewership jumped to 7,200 as she stood her ground. Daniel turned back to Maya, his voice dropping to a more conciliatory tone. Look, I understand you have your assigned seats, but sometimes in these situations, it's easier for everyone if the rule-following black woman and child move to accommodate the rule-breaking white woman. Maya finished for him, her voice steady but with an edge of steel. Is that the solution you're proposing? The live stream comments exploded with support. She said it. Call it what it is. This is exactly what happens every time. Daniel blinked, taken aback by the direct confrontation of the racial dynamics at play. That's not what That's exactly what you're doing, Maya interrupted. You know we're in our correct seats. You know she's not, but you're pressuring us to move because it's the path of least resistance for you. Victoria gasped dramatically. How dare you bring race into this? This has nothing to do with race. This is about my son needing the window seat. Maya didn't even look at her, keeping her gaze fixed on Daniel. I'd like to see the written SkyWest policy that states passengers with status can take any seat they want and regardless of reservation. The live stream count had reached 8,700. Boarding had essentially stopped as passengers and crew watched the confrontation unfold. From the front of the plane, another flight attendant was making her way down the aisle. Concerned by the holdup, Daniel's expression shifted from conciliatory to frustrated. He turned to Victoria. Ma'am, I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask you to take your assigned seats. These passengers are in their correct seats, and we need to complete boarding. Victoria's face flushed with anger. This is how you treat your elite members. My husband flies with you 3 times a week. I understand, ma'am, Daniel said, his voice firming, and we appreciate your loyalty. But I cannot ask other passengers to give up their assigned seats. If you'd like, I can see if anyone else would be willing to switch with you, but I cannot force these passengers to move. It was a reasonable solution, but Victoria wasn't interested in reasonable solutions. She wanted to win. I want to speak to the captain, she demanded. This is unacceptable service. Daniel sighed. The captain is completing pre-flight checks and cannot be disturbed. Now, please take your assigned seats so we can continue boarding. Victoria stood her ground, her entitlement a physical force. I'm not moving until this is resolved to my satisfaction. The standoff was interrupted by a firm voice from the front of the plane. Is there a problem here that's delaying my flight? All heads turned to see Captain Miguel Rivera, a distinguished-looking Hispanic man in his 50s, standing in the aisle. His presence commanded immediate respect, his uniform crisp and authoritative. Daniel quickly moved toward him, speaking in hushed tones. Maya couldn't hear what was said, but she could see the captain's expression growing more severe as he listened. Lisa's live stream captured it all, her viewership now at 12,300 and growing exponentially. Comments were flooding in faster than anyone could read them, most supportive of Maya and Amara, some questioning why this was even an issue, and a few defending Victoria's right to the window seat. Finally, Captain Rivera approached row 14. Ma'am, he addressed Victoria directly. I understand you're refusing to sit in your assigned seat. Is that correct? Victoria launched into her explanation, emphasizing her husband's status, her son's needs, and the supposed unreasonableness of Maya and Amara. Captain Rivera listened impassively, then checked the boarding passes himself. His decision was swift and unambiguous. Ma'am, these passengers are in their correctly assigned seats. You are not. You have 2 choices. Take your assigned seats immediately, or deplane and rebook on a later flight. We will not delay 173 other passengers because you want a different seat than the one assigned to you. The authority in his voice left no room for argument. Victoria's mouth opened and closed, her sense of entitlement colliding with the immovable object of the captain's command. Fine, she finally snapped. But I'll be filing a formal complaint, and my husband will be speaking to your corporate office. That is your prerogative, Captain Rivera replied calmly. Now please take your seats so we can complete boarding. Victoria finally moved toward her assigned seats, dragging a still oblivious Ethan with her. As she passed Maya and Amara, she hissed, "This isn't over." Maya ignored her, turning to Amara with a reassuring smile. "See, sweet pea, everything's fine now. The right thing happened in the end." But as Captain Rivera returned to the cockpit and Daniel moved away, Jennifer lingered near their row. Her expression was no longer professionally neutral, but openly resentful. She leaned in closer to Maya, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "That was completely unnecessary. You could have just moved and avoided all this drama." Maya met her gaze steadily. "What was unnecessary was you trying to make us give up our seats instead of doing your job." Jennifer's lips thinned. "We'll be providing service shortly after takeoff," she said, her voice frigid. "I hope the rest of your flight is uneventful." The threat was subtle but clear. The conflict might be over, but Maya and Amara could expect minimal service for the duration of the flight. As Jennifer walked away, Lisa Rodriguez gave Maya a subtle thumbs up from across the aisle. Her live stream had captured everything, and the comment section was overwhelmingly supportive of Maya's stance. The viewer count had stabilized at around 15,000, with many commenters tagging SkyWest's social media accounts and news outlets. Boarding resumed, but the atmosphere in their section of the cabin remained tense. Victoria and Ethan were visibly sulking in 16C and 16D, while Jennifer avoided eye contact with Maya and Amara during her pre-flight checks. Maya squeezed Amara's hand. "You okay, sweet pea?" Amara nodded, but her earlier excitement had dimmed. "Why was that lady so mean about the seat?" Maya considered her answer carefully. "Some people think the rules don't apply to them. They're used to getting their way, so when someone says no, they don't know how to handle it." "Like Ethan at my school," Amara said thoughtfully. "He always cuts in line, and when the teacher tells him to go back, he cries until she lets him stay." Maya smiled at the apt comparison. "Exactly like that. But you know what the rules are there for everyone, not just some people." As the flight attendants prepared for departure and the safety demonstration began, Maya thought the incident was behind them, but she had underestimated both Victoria's entitlement and Jennifer's resentment. The storm had not passed. It had merely paused for a moment, gathering strength for its next assault. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're now ready for departure. Flight attendants, please be seated for takeoff." The plane had pushed back from the gate and was taxiing toward the runway. The initial confrontation seemed to have passed, but Maya could feel the lingering tension. Victoria and Ethan were seated several rows behind them, but her piercing stare was almost palpable. Jennifer Morgan had made a point of checking seatbelts on their row with brisk efficiency, avoiding eye contact with Maya and Amara. Lisa Rodriguez, their unexpected ally across the aisle, gave Maya a subtle nod of encouragement. Her live stream had ended with the resolution of the seating dispute, but the video remained online, gathering views and comments. The hashtag #SkyWestShame was starting to trend on multiple platforms. Amara had settled somewhat, her face pressed against the window as she watched the airport scenery slide by. But she was quieter than usual, the sparkle in her eyes dimmed by the unpleasantness of the boarding experience. As the plane lined up on the runway and the engines roared to full power, Amara grabbed Maya's hand tightly. "Here comes the funny tummy part," she whispered. Maya squeezed her hand reassuringly. "Just breathe deeply. It'll pass before you know it." The acceleration pushed them back in their seats, and within moments, the plane was airborne, climbing steeply over Chicago. Amara's grip gradually relaxed as the initial discomfort of takeoff subsided. "Look, Auntie Maya." "We're in the clouds," Amara exclaimed, her earlier excitement returning as the aircraft broke through the cloud layer into brilliant sunshine. For a few minutes, the magic of flight seemed to have restored some normalcy. The flight attendants began moving through the cabin once they reached cruising altitude, preparing for beverage service. Then came the chime of someone's call button. From a few rows back, Victoria's imperious voice carried clearly. "Excuse me, I need assistance immediately." Maya closed her eyes briefly. Of course it wasn't over. Jennifer responded to the call, and though Maya couldn't hear their conversation clearly, Victoria's agitated gestures and Jennifer's sympathetic nodding told her enough. They were talking about her and Amara. Minutes later, Daniel Wilson appeared beside their row. His expression was grim, his posture tense with barely concealed hostility. "Ma'am, Could I speak with you privately? He asked Maya, his voice low. Anything you need to say to me can be said right here, Maya replied evenly. She didn't trust leaving Amara alone, even for a moment. Daniel lowered his voice further, leaning in so that neighboring passengers couldn't easily overhear. We've received a complaint about your behavior during boarding. Mrs. Whitfield claims you were aggressive and used racially charged language. Maya's eyebrows rose in disbelief. That's completely false. As you witnessed yourself, I remained seated and calm while she refused to take her assigned seats. If anyone was aggressive, it was Whitfield. Lisa Rodriguez, who had been pretending not to listen, was discreetly recording again. Her new live stream was captioned, "SkyWest flight attendant harasses passengers in their assigned seats, Part 2. The viewer count was already climbing rapidly. Nevertheless, Daniel continued, we need to address the situation. Miss Whitfield is very upset and has threatened to involve corporate and social media if we don't resolve this to her satisfaction. And by resolve, you mean, Maya asked, though she already knew the answer. It would be easiest for everyone if you and your niece would move to different seats. We have 2 seats available in row 21. Maya quickly calculated the location. Back by the restrooms, you want us to give up our selected paid-for seats and move to worse ones because a passenger is making false accusations after she couldn't get her way. Daniel's expression hardened. Ma'am, I am making a request as a member of the flight crew for you to switch seats to ensure a comfortable environment for all passengers. And I am declining that request, Maya replied firmly. We have done nothing wrong. We are seated in our assigned seats. We will not be moving. The live stream viewer count had reached 6,500, with comments pouring in, "This is outrageous. She's actually lying about them after she was the problem. SkyWest, are you seeing this? That flight attendant should be fired." Daniel leaned closer, his voice dropping to a threatening whisper. Ma'am, I am now making a request as a member of the flight crew for you to switch seats to ensure the timely continuation of service on this aircraft. If you refuse to comply with the flight crew instruction, I will have to get the captain. We can have you removed at our next landing for non-compliance. It was the nuclear option, a blatant, dishonest twisting of FAA regulations, which were designed to ensure safety, not to settle seating squabbles. Maya knew it was an empty threat, a procedural bluff, but it was a threat nonetheless. The implication was clear surrender, or we will publicly humiliate you and your niece and ruin your trip entirely. The live stream comments exploded with outrage. Is he threatening them? This is a complete abuse of power. FAA needs to see this immediately. I'm contacting SkyWest Corporate right now. Maya looked at Amara. The little girl's eyes were wide with fear. The joy of the trip had evaporated, replaced by a tense, terrifying adult conflict she didn't understand but knew was centered on her. She saw the staring faces of other passengers, heard the muttered comments. She saw the anger in Daniel's face and the brittle authority in the flight attendant's stance. In that instant, Maya's calculation changed. The battle for the seat was lost. Winning it now would require an argument so explosive it would deeply traumatize Amara. Her primary mission always was to protect her niece, protect her from the ugliness of the world. And right now, that meant getting her out of the spotlight. The fight for justice could happen later, but the fight for Amara's sense of security had to be won now. A cold, controlled fury settled over Maya. She would comply with the illegitimate demand, but she would not forget. She would not forgive. This was no longer a dispute. It was an incident, and there would be a reckoning. Fine, Maya said, her voice devoid of all warmth. We will move. Daniel's shoulders sagged with relief. Thank you for your cooperation. If you'll just gather your things. I didn't say we would move now, Maya interrupted. We will move after beverage service is complete. I don't want my niece to have to get up and navigate the aisle while carts are moving. Daniel hesitated, then nodded stiffly. That's acceptable. I'll come back once service is complete. Lisa's live stream captured his retreat, her camera following him as he walked back toward Victoria's row. The viewer count had reached 11,800, with comments uniformly outraged at Daniel's threat and the entire situation. As he walked away, Amara leaned into Maya, her voice so quiet it was nearly inaudible over the airplane's ambient noise. Auntie Maya, why do we have to move? Did we do something wrong? The question broke Maya's heart. No, sweet pea, you did nothing wrong, nothing at all. Sometimes it's just easier to let bullies have their way than to keep fighting. But that doesn't mean they're right. Maya saw Victoria watching from a few rows back, a smug, triumphant smirk on her face. She had won. She had gotten her way. To her, the matter was closed. For Maya, it was just beginning. Her mind, trained to be methodical and precise in the high-stakes environment of cardiac surgery, was now working with the same cool detachment. Emotion was the fuel, but logic would be the weapon. She was no longer just an ant on vacation. She was an observer, a chronicler of an injustice. Lisa Rodriguez leaned slightly across the aisle. I got it all, she whispered. That was total BS. You should sue. What is your viewer count? Maya asked quietly. Almost 12,000 now, and it's being shared everywhere. People are tagging Sky West, the FAA, and major news outlets. Maya nodded slightly in acknowledgement. She pulled out her phone and began typing detailed notes, names, times, exact quotes. She documented the initial confrontation, Victoria's false accusations, Daniel's threats, and Jennifer's differential treatment. Her fingers moved swiftly over the keyboard, recording everything with clinical precision. When the beverage cart reached their row, Jennifer was pointedly impersonal. What would you like? She asked, her tone frigid. I'll have a ginger ale, Maya replied evenly. Amara. Apple juice, please, Amara said in a small voice. Jennifer poured their drinks without a word, not even offering the customary snacks that other passengers had received. She avoided eye contact throughout the brief interaction, a clear message that Maya and Amara were now persona non grata. As the cart moved on, Maya continued documenting, adding Jennifer's differential treatment to her growing file of evidence. She noted the exact time of each interaction, the specific wording of Daniel's threat, and the observable favoritism shown to Victoria. Daniel returned after beverage service, as promised. We're ready for you to move now, he said, not bothering to mask his impatience. Maya stood, helping Amara gather her things. Come on, sweet pea, let's play musical chairs. As they moved past row 16, Victoria made a point of catching Maya's eye, her smile venomous with victory. Ethan was already playing with his iPad again, completely oblivious to the drama his mother had created. Their new seats, 21E and 21F, were indeed near the restrooms, with constant foot traffic and the lingering smell of disinfectant. The windows in this row were misaligned, offering a partial view at best. Amara settled into the window seat, but her usual excitement was gone. She didn't press her face to the glass or point out cloud formations. She simply sat quietly, her small hands folded in her lap. Maya's anger crystallized into something cold and purposeful. The fight for the seat was lost, but the war for accountability had just begun. She opened her notes app again, continuing to document every detail of their treatment. About 30 minutes later, Amara unbuckled her seatbelt and leaned close to Maya. Her voice was so quiet that Maya had to strain to hear her over the engine noise. Auntie Maya. Yes, sweet pea. Why did we have to move? Was it because I'm brown? The question struck Maya with the force of a physical blow. It was the question she had been dreading, the poison dart of racism finding its mark in the heart of a child. She pulled Amara closer, her arm wrapping around her niece's shaking shoulders. She had protected her from the scene, but she couldn't protect her from the meaning behind it. Not entirely, no, baby, she lied, the words tasting like ash in her mouth. It's because some people are rude. It has nothing to do with you. You are perfect. But as Maya looked toward the front of the plane where Jennifer was laughing with another flight attendant, she knew Amara's innocent question was closer to the truth than her own comforting lie. And the quiet, cold fury within her began to crystallize into a plan. The flight had barely begun. But for SkyWest Airlines and its crew, the final descent had already been initiated. The plane cruised at 35,000 feet, but inside Maya felt like she was still plummeting. Amara's question, was it because I'm brown, echoed in her mind, a damning indictment of the world she had hoped her niece could navigate a little longer without such harsh realities. Beside her, Amara had fallen into an uneasy sleep, her head resting against Maya's shoulder. The excitement of the trip, followed by the stress of the conflict, had exhausted her. Maya studied her niece's face in repose, the long eyelashes, the subtle curve of her cheeks that so resembled Olivia's. How could anyone look at this child and see anything but precious innocence? Yet Victoria Whitfield had seen an obstacle. Jennifer and Daniel had seen an inconvenience. They had all seen someone whose comfort and dignity were expendable. And now Amara herself had glimpsed that ugly reality, putting words to the subtle discrimination she was too young to fully understand, but old enough to sense. The restroom door opened and closed constantly, passengers brushing past their seats without apology. The location was as bad as Maya had feared, noisy, busy, with intermittent wafts of chemical cleaner. A far cry from the peaceful window seat Amara had been so excited about. Maya continued typing notes into her phone, documenting every detail with clinical precision, the exact times, the specific threats, the differential treatment, the look of smug satisfaction on Victoria's face when they were forced to move. She was building a case, not just an emotional complaint, but an evidence-based indictment. Lisa Rodriguez occasionally glanced back from her seat several rows ahead, giving Maya supportive nods. The live stream had ended, but the damage was done. Comments were flooding social media, with hashtags #SkyWest, shame, and #SeatJustice trending on multiple platforms. Maya's phone buzzed with a text from her father. Flight going okay, how's our girl doing? She hesitated, then replied simply, we'll talk when we land. Give Mom a hug. No need to worry her parents just yet. There would be time enough for that conversation later. Amara stirred, her eyes fluttering open. Are we there yet? She asked sleepily. Not yet, sweet pea, Maya replied softly. We've still got about 2 hours to go. How are you feeling? Amara considered the question, her small face solemn. I'm okay, but I wish we could have stayed in our first seats. These ones smell funny. The bathroom proximity meant occasional wafts of chemical cleaner drifted their way, and the constant foot traffic made it difficult to relax. I know, Maya said. I wish we could have stayed there too. The lady was mean, huh? Amara said suddenly. She looked at us like we were in her way. Maya's heart contracted. Children notice more than adults gave them credit for. Some people think the world revolves around them, she explained gently. They don't consider how their actions affect others. Like bullies at school. Amara nodded sagely. Exactly like that. But you always tell me to stand up to bullies, Amara pointed out, a hint of confusion in her voice. Why did we move? It was a fair question, and one that Maya had been asking herself. She had always taught Amara to stand firm in the face of injustice. Yet here she was, having surrendered to exactly that. Sometimes, Maya began carefully, standing up to bullies isn't just about saying no in the moment. Sometimes it's about making sure they face consequences for their actions later. She showed Amara her phone screen, where she'd been documenting everything. See, I'm keeping track of everything that happened. When we land, we're going to make sure the people in charge know how we were treated. Amara studied the notes with interest, like when Miss Peterson writes incident reports when someone breaks the rules at school. Maya smiled. Just like that. It might not feel like it right now, but justice often takes time. The explanation seemed to satisfy Amara, who nodded thoughtfully before turning to look out the window. The view from this seat was partially obstructed by the wing, another small disappointment in what should have been a magical first flight. Maya noticed Jennifer deliberately avoiding their section during her rounds through the cabin. Other passengers received frequent check-ins, offers of additional beverages, and friendly conversation. Their row might as well have been marked with an invisible "Do Not Serve" sign. A different flight attendant, Sophia, according to her name tag, passed by and noticed Amara's empty cup. Would you like some more juice? She asked kindly. Yes, please, Amara replied, brightening at the simple courtesy. And for you, ma'am, Sophia turned to Maya. Just water, thank you. Maya answered, appreciating the normal treatment. As Sophia moved on to get their drinks, Maya observed the stark contrast in service. Sophia had no knowledge of the earlier conflict and treated them with the basic courtesy any passenger would expect. The difference highlighted just how deliberately Jennifer and Daniel were punishing them for standing up for themselves. Sophia returned with their drinks and even brought extra snacks for Amara. These might help pass the time, she said, handing over packages of cookies and pretzels. Thank you, Maya said sincerely. That's very kind of you. After Sophia moved on, Maya spotted Jennifer watching from the galley area, her expression sour. When she saw Maya looking back, she quickly turned away, busying herself with the beverage cart. The rest of the flight continued in this vein. Pointed neglect from Jennifer and Daniel, contrasted with normal service from the other crew members who weren't part of the original conflict. Maya used the time to formulate her strategy for when they landed. She would need to speak with someone in authority, someone who could document the incident officially and take appropriate action. She had names, memes, and detailed accounts of what had transpired. The videos from Lisa's live stream provided additional evidence. She would be methodical and precise, just as she was in the operating room. As they began their initial descent into San Francisco, Maya gathered their belongings, preparing for landing. The end of this flight would mark the beginning of her quest for accountability. She had the evidence. She had the determination. All she needed now was the right audience. "Auntie Maya," Amara said suddenly, looking up from her window. "I just realized something." "What's that, sweet pea?" "The mean lady and that flight attendant, they were bullies. And you taught me that bullies only have power if we let them make us feel bad about ourselves." Maya smiled, impressed by her niece's insight. "That's exactly right. So even though they made us move seats, they don't get to make us feel bad about who we are, right?" Maya's throat tightened with emotion. Somehow, despite everything, Amara had found her way to the heart of the matter. "Right," Maya affirmed, squeezing Amara's hand. "They absolutely do not get to do that. Not ever." As the plane began its final approach to San Francisco International Airport, Maya looked out at the iconic Golden Gate Bridge in the distance. It was a beautiful sight, but her mind was focused on what would happen after they landed. This wasn't just about seats anymore. It was about dignity, respect, and ensuring that what happened to them wouldn't happen to someone else. The wheels touched down on the runway with a jolt that seemed to underscore Maya's resolve. The fight for justice was just beginning. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to San Francisco International Airport, where the local time is 1:17 p.m. and the temperature is a pleasant 68 degrees. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened until we reach the gate and the captain turns off the fasten seatbelt sign. Maya tuned out the standard arrival announcement, focusing instead on her plan. As a cardiac surgeon, she knew the value of methodical action in high-stakes situations. Emotion was acknowledged but controlled. Logic prevailed. Steps were followed in precise order. Step 1, document everything. Complete. Step 2, gather identifying information from involved parties. Pending. Step 3, speak with the highest authority present. Pending. The plane reached the gate, and the familiar sound of the jet bridge connecting to the aircraft door followed. Passengers began to file out, the usual mix of impatience and relief evident on their faces. "Look, we're in San Francisco," Amara exclaimed, momentarily distracted from the unpleasantness of the flight by the excitement of arrival. Maya smiled, grateful for her niece's resilience. "We sure are, sweet pea. Grandma and Grandpa are probably already waiting for us." As the cabin gradually emptied, Maya made a deliberate decision to wait. There was no rush. In fact, she preferred to be among the last to deplane. It would give her the opportunity she needed. Victoria Whitfield made a point of avoiding eye contact as she hustled Ethan past them, but Maya could see the lingering smugness in her posture. She had won, or so she thought. Lisa Rodriguez paused as she passed their row. "I posted the videos," she said quietly. "They're already going viral. #SkyWest. Shame is trending on Twitter." She handed Maya a business card. "If you need a witness, call me." Maya accepted the card with a nod of gratitude. "Thank you." Finally, when most passengers had deplaned, Maya stood up to, "Come on, sweet pea. Time to go see Grandma and Grandpa." They gathered their belongings and made their way slowly toward the exit. Maya deliberately taking her time. Jennifer and Daniel were standing at the door, offering perfunctory farewells to departing passengers. Their smiles faltered when they saw Maya and Amara approaching. "I'd like to speak with the captain before I deplane," Maya stated calmly but firmly. Daniel stepped forward, blocking her path. "The captain is completing post-flight procedures and isn't available to passengers at this time." "Then I'll wait," Maya replied simply. "My niece and I were subjected to discriminatory treatment on this flight, and I intend to report it directly to the highest authority available. Jennifer's face paled slightly. Ma'am, if you have concerns about your flight experience, customer service representatives are available in the terminal. I'm aware of my options, Maya interrupted. But given the serious nature of what occurred, I believe Captain Rivera would want to be informed directly, unless, of course, you'd prefer I take this matter straight to the media. I understand several passengers already have. The mention of media coverage struck a nerve. Daniel and Jennifer exchanged worried glances. I'll check if the captain is available. Daniel conceded reluctantly. Please wait here. As he disappeared into the cockpit, Jennifer shifted uncomfortably, avoiding eye contact with Maya. Amara stood quietly, her hand firmly in Maya's, observing everything with solemn attention. A moment later, Daniel returned, followed by Captain Rivera. The captain's expression was serious but neutral, suggesting he'd been given only limited information about the situation. I understand there was an issue during the flight, he said, addressing Maya directly. How can I help you? Captain Rivera, Maya began. My niece and I were forced to give up our assigned seats we specifically selected and paid extra for, under threat of being deplaned at the next stop. We were moved from window and aisle seats to inferior seats by the lavatory to accommodate another passenger who refused to accept her own assigned seats. The captain's eyebrows rose slightly. Is this true? He asked, turning to Daniel and Jennifer. It was a complex situation, Jennifer began. It's a simple yes or no question. Captain Rivera interrupted. Did these passengers have their assigned seats? Were they moved to accommodate another passenger's preference? Was there a threat of deplaning? Jennifer hesitated, but Daniel stepped forward. Yes, sir. They were in their assigned seats. Mrs. Whitfield was insistent about having a window seat for her son, and we made a judgment call to resolve the situation. A judgment call that involved threatening to remove a woman and child from the flight for refusing to give up their legitimate seats, Captain Rivera clarified, his voice sharpening. Neither flight attendant responded, their silence damning. I see, the captain said. He turned back to Maya. Ma'am, on behalf of SkyWest Airlines, I sincerely apologize for this incident. This is not how we train our crews to handle seating disputes. I appreciate the apology, Captain, Maya replied. But what concerns me more is the underlying reason this occurred. My niece asked me a question during the flight that broke my heart. She wanted to know if we had to move because we're brown. Amara looked down at her shoes, clearly uncomfortable with the attention. I explained to her that it wasn't about that, Maya continued. But I'm not sure I believe it myself. Would Mrs. Whitfield have been treated the same way if she were in my position? Would your crew have been so quick to accommodate her demands at someone else's expense? The captain's expression darkened further. He looked at his flight attendants, then back at Maya. Those are valid questions, he acknowledged, and ones that deserve proper investigation, not just a quick apology at the aircraft door. He pulled out a business card from his pocket. This is my direct contact information. I'm going to file an incident report as soon as I complete my post-flight duties. I would appreciate it if you would email me your account of what happened, along with any documentation you have. Maya accepted the card. Thank you, Captain. I intend to pursue this matter through all appropriate channels. As you should, Bishon, he agreed. This is not how SkyWest Airlines trains its personnel to handle these situations. He turned to Daniel and Jennifer. I'll need both of your statements in my office as soon as we're done here. The flight attendants nodded stiffly, their expressions a mixture of embarrassment and resentment. As Maya and Amara finally stepped off the plane, Captain Rivera added, Dr. Reynolds, I hope this unfortunate incident doesn't define your entire experience with us. Maya paused, surprised. You know who I am. Your name appeared on our upgraded manifest when we landed. The captain explained, Dr. Maya Reynolds, Chief of Pediatric Cardiac Surgery at Northwestern Memorial. Your reputation precedes you. A flicker of satisfaction crossed Maya's face. This was the first acknowledgement of her professional status since the beginning of the journey. It hadn't mattered when she was just another black woman with a child, but now that they knew her title, her importance was suddenly recognized. Interesting, she observed coolly. My credentials weren't relevant when your crew was threatening to deplane us, but they matter now. The captain had the grace to look uncomfortable. That's a fair point, Dr. Reynolds. and one that will be addressed in my report. Maya nodded, then guided Amara onto the jet bridge. As they walked toward the terminal, Amara looked up. Are we in trouble, Auntie Maya? No, Sweet Pea, we're not in trouble at all. In fact, I think other people might be in trouble now. Because they were mean to us. Because they didn't follow the rules. And there are consequences for that. They emerged into the terminal, where the usual bustle of arriving passengers greeted them. Maya spotted her parents immediately, her father's tall figure and her mother's distinctive silver hair, making them easy to identify even in the crowd. Grandma, Grandpa, Amara called out, her earlier distress momentarily forgotten as she rushed toward them. Maya followed more slowly, watching as her mother enveloped Amara in a warm embrace while her father took her backpack. The joy of reunion temporarily overshadowed the unpleasantness of the journey. But as Maya approached her parents, she saw her father's expression shift from welcome to concern as he registered her mood. Maya, everything okay? He asked quietly as he hugged her. We'll talk about it later, she murmured, not wanting to revisit the incident in front of Amara now that the child was finally smiling again. Her father nodded, understanding immediately. He had raised 2 daughters in America. He knew the look of someone who had just been reminded that their humanity was conditional, their dignity negotiable. As they walked toward baggage claim, Maya's phone buzzed with an incoming email. She glanced at it quickly, a formal message from SkyWest Customer Relations, acknowledging receipt of a priority incident report filed by Captain Rivera. They were requesting her contact information for immediate follow-up. Maya pocketed her phone. The wheels of accountability were beginning to turn, but they weren't moving fast enough for her satisfaction. Not yet, but soon, very soon, they would understand exactly who they had messed with. And it had nothing to do with her being a prominent surgeon. It had everything to do with her being a woman who understood systems, documented meticulously, and refused to let injustice slide, especially when it touched her family. The drive from San Francisco International to Sausalito was filled with Amara's excited chatter about what she wanted to do during their visit. See the sea lions at Pier 39, ride the cable cars, visit the exploratorium. Maya's parents listened indulgently, occasionally glancing in the rearview mirror at Maya, who remained uncharacteristically quiet. We'll do all of that and more. Her mother, Eleanor, promised Amara. We've got 10 whole days to explore. Maya's father, James, navigated the Golden Gate Bridge with practiced ease, pointing out landmarks to Amara as they crossed. Look over there, you can see Alcatraz Island, where criminals used to live, Amara asked, pressing her face against the window. That's right, James chuckled. The most dangerous ones. Maya smiled despite herself. Her father had a way of making even former prisons sound like exciting adventures. As they pulled into the driveway of her parents' hillside home, Maya felt some of the tension from the flight begin to dissipate. The house was exactly as she remembered, a charming craftsman with a spectacular view of the bay, the home her parents had purchased after her father's retirement from academia. Home sweet home, Eleanor announced as they parked. Amara, I've got your room and all set up with new sheets and those twinkle lights you liked from your last visit. The star ones? Amara asked excitedly. The very same. While Eleanor took Amara inside to get settled, James helped Maya with the luggage. Once they were alone, he turned to her. All right, what happened? He asked directly. You've got that look. What look? Maya deflected, though she knew exactly what he meant. The same look you had when you came home from your first day of medical school orientation and that professor asked if you were in the right building. James replied, I'm calculating exactly how to make someone regret their life choices look. Maya sighed. Her father had always been able to read her with unnerving accuracy. We had an incident on the plane, she admitted. A woman demanded Amara give up her window seat, and when we refused, the flight attendants threatened to have us removed if we didn't comply. James's expression darkened. They what? They forced us to move from our assigned seats that we had specifically selected and paid extra for to make room for a white woman and her son who simply wanted our seats instead of their assigned ones. And they threatened to remove you from the flight. They invoked flight crew instructions as if refusing to give up our legitimate seats was somehow a safety issue. James shook his head, a lifetime of similar indignities reflected in his eyes. He had been one of the first black physics professors at the University of Chicago, And Maya knew he'd faced his share of discrimination over the decades. Some things never change, he said quietly. What are you going to do about it? I've already started, Maya replied, her voice hardening with resolve. I've documented everything. I spoke with the captain. I'm filing formal complaints through every available channel. James nodded approvingly. Good. Don't let them sweep this under the rug. They carried the luggage inside, where the warm scent of Eleanor's cooking greeted them. Amara was already in the kitchen, helping her grandmother arrange cookies on a plate. Wash your hands first, sweet pea, Maya reminded her automatically. I already did, Amara reported proudly. Grandma has 3 kinds of cookies, just like you said. Eleanor turned from the stove, spatula in hand. Dinner will be ready in about 20 minutes. Why don't you two get settled in? Maya and Amara went upstairs to their respective rooms. Maya's childhood bedroom had been transformed into a comfortable guest room, but it still held echoes of her youth, medical textbooks on the shelves, a framed picture of her and Olivia as teenagers, a University of Chicago pennant on the wall. She set her suitcase down and sat heavily on the bed, the events of the day catching up with her. She pulled out her phone and began composing an email to Captain Rivera, attaching her detailed notes and formally requesting an investigation. As she was finishing, a notification popped up, another email from SkyWest Airlines. This one was different. It wasn't from customer relations, but from the office of the Chief Operating Officer, requesting a phone call at her earliest convenience regarding the incident on Flight 937. Maya raised an eyebrow. That was fast. Either Captain Rivera's report had made an immediate impression, or Lisa's videos had gained even more traction than anticipated. A soft knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Auntie Maya, Amara peeked in. Grandma says dinner's ready. Coming, sweet pea. Maya set her phone aside. The emails could wait until after dinner. Downstairs, Eleanor had prepared Maya's favorite, her signature jerk chicken with coconut rice and plantains. The aroma alone lifted Maya's spirits. Some childhood comforts never lost their power. Throughout dinner, the conversation remained deliberately light. Eleanor shared neighborhood gossip. James discussed a book he was reading, and Amara excitedly planned their itinerary for the next day. Maya participated half-heartedly, her mind still processing the events on the plane. After Amara had been tucked into bed with promises of a ferry ride to the city in the morning, Maya joined her parents in the living room. The large windows offered a panoramic nighttime view of San Francisco across the bay, the city lights twinkling like earthbound stars. All right, Eleanor said, setting down 3 glasses of wine. Tell us exactly what happened. Maya recounted the incident in detail. Victoria's demand, Jennifer's bias, Daniel's threats, and Amara's heartbreaking question. Her parents listened without interruption, though Maya could see the anger building in both their expressions. The same old story, Eleanor said when Maya finished. Just with new players. I've already started the formal complaint process, Maya assured them. And apparently, it's getting attention. I just got an email from the COO's office requesting a call. Good, James said firmly. Make them squirm. I intend to, Maya replied, taking a sip of her wine. But the part that keeps coming back to me is Amara's face when she asked if it was because of her skin color. She's 9. She shouldn't have to think about these things yet. Eleanor reached across and squeezed Maya's hand. You know as well as I do. There's no yet for our children. The world doesn't wait for them to be ready. Maya nodded, the truth of her mother's words landing heavily. It was the same conversation Black parents had been having for generations. How to prepare their children for a world that would judge them by their skin before anything else, without crushing their spirits in the process. What are you hoping to get out of this? James asked pragmatically. Maya considered the question. Accountability. I want those flight attendants to face consequences for their actions. I want the airline to acknowledge what happened and take concrete steps to prevent it from happening again. You might get more than that, Eleanor observed, gesturing to Maya's phone, which was lighting up with another notification. Sounds like someone important wants to talk to you. Maya checked her phone. Another email from the COO's office. This one marked urgent. She excused herself to take the call in her father's study for privacy. The woman who answered identified herself as Rebecca Martinez, executive assistant to COO Thomas Williams. Dr. Reynolds, thank you for taking my call. Mr. Williams is extremely concerned about the incident on Flight 937 and would like to speak with you personally first thing tomorrow morning, if possible. While Maya agreed to a 9 a.m. call, then returned to the living room, where her parents were waiting expectantly. The COO wants to speak with me personally tomorrow morning, she informed them. Apparently, this has become a priority issue. James looked satisfied. As it should be. I wonder what triggered the escalation, Eleanor mused. Customer complaints usually languish in the system for days before anyone important notices. Maya's phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from Lisa Rodriguez. Your airline drama has gone super viral. 3.7 million views on TikTok and counting. #SkyWest. Shame is trending nationally. News outlets picking it up. You might want to check it out. Maya showed her parents the message. James immediately pulled out his iPad and searched for the hashtag. The results were overwhelming. Thousands of posts across multiple platforms. News articles with headlines like, Black child forced to give up seat on SkyWest flight, and commentary from influential accounts condemning the airline's actions. Lisa's videos had indeed gone viral. The first, showing the initial confrontation, had over 4 million views. The second, capturing Daniel's threat to have them removed from the flight, was approaching 3 million. Both were being shared widely, with viewers expressing outrage at the blatant discrimination. Well, Eleanor said after they'd scrolled through dozens of posts, that explains the COO's sudden interest. Maya nodded, a complex mix of emotions washing over her. On one hand, she was gratified by the public support and the pressure it was putting on the airline. On the other, she was concerned about Amara potentially being recognized or affected by the sudden spotlight. I should check if any of this identifies Amara by name, she said, suddenly protective. I don't want her school friends seeing this. James continued scrolling. Doesn't look like it. The post referred to you as black woman or black mother and Amara as little black girl or child. No names that I can see. Maya felt a momentary relief, followed by a renewed sense of purpose. The anonymity of black woman and little black girl was part of the problem. It was what had allowed Victoria, Jennifer, and Daniel to dismiss them so easily. But now that same facelessness was serving a purpose, allowing their experience to become emblematic of a broader issue. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was an email from customer relations, offering 25,000 bonus miles as a gesture of goodwill. Maya almost laughed at the inadequacy of the response. They're offering me airline miles, she told her parents incredulously, as if I'd ever want to fly with them again. It's just the automated response, James said dismissively. The real conversation will happen with the COO tomorrow. Maya nodded, finishing her wine. I should get some sleep before that call. I want to be sharp. Her parents hugged her goodnight, and Maya headed back upstairs. She paused at Amara's door, gently pushing it open to check on her. The star-shaped string lights cast a soft, celestial glow over the sleeping child. Amara's face was peaceful in sleep, untouched by the concerns that had shadowed it earlier. Maya watched her niece for a moment, heart full of both love and fierce protectiveness. Tomorrow, she would demand accountability not just for herself, but for Amara, for the innocence that had been tarnished, for the question no child should have to ask. Morning came with the soft glow of fog rolling over the bay. Maya woke early, prepared a cup of coffee, and reviewed her notes one last time before the scheduled call. She had decided to take the call from her father's study again, away from Amara's curious ears. At precisely 9 a.m., her phone rang. The caller ID displayed SkyWest Airlines executive offices. Dr. Reynolds speaking. She answered professionally. Dr. Reynolds, this is Thomas Williams, Chief Operating Officer of SkyWest Airlines, came a deep, measured voice. Thank you for agreeing to speak with me this morning. I want to personally express our profound apologies for the treatment you and your niece experienced on Flight 937 yesterday. Maya noted the careful phrasing. Treatment you experienced, rather than actions our employees took. Thank you, Mr. Williams, she replied evenly. I appreciate your call. I've reviewed Captain Rivera's report and seen the videos circulating online. Williams continued. What happened was completely unacceptable and contrary to our airline's values and policies. I want to assure you that we're taking this matter extremely seriously. I'm glad to hear that, Maya said, because what happened yesterday wasn't just poor customer service. It was discrimination, plain and simple. There was a brief pause. We're conducting a thorough investigation into all aspects of the incident, Williams said carefully. Would you be willing to share your perspective on what happened? I understand you've submitted notes to Captain Rivera, but I'd value hearing directly from you. Maya provided a precise, detailed account of the events, from Victoria's initial demand through Jennifer and Daniel's actions to their eventual forced relocation. She maintained a clinical detachment throughout, stating facts without emotional coloring. When she finished, Williams sighed heavily. Again, Dr. Reynolds, I am deeply sorry. This is not how we train our crews to handle these situations. We have strict policies regarding seat assignments, and what happened was a clear violation of those policies. What actions are you planning to take? Maya asked directly. We're still completing our investigation, but I can tell you that both flight attendants have been placed on administrative leave pending the outcome. Williams replied, "Okay, we're also reviewing our training procedures to ensure nothing like this happens again." Maya wasn't satisfied. And the passenger who initiated this situation, Victoria Whitfield, we're addressing that as well. Williams assured her her behavior was completely inappropriate. Mr. Williams, Maya said, her voice taking on the firm tone she used when delivering difficult diagnoses. I appreciate the apology, but what I'm looking for is substantive action. My niece asked me if we had to move because we're brown. I had to lie to her because I did not want to confirm what she already suspected, that in 2025, her skin color still determines how she'll be treated by people in authority. Williams was silent for a moment. I understand your concerns, Dr. Reynolds, and I want to be transparent with you about the steps we're taking. In addition to the investigation, I've directed our training department to develop enhanced cultural sensitivity modules for all customer-facing staff. We're also reviewing our policies on seat reassignment to ensure they explicitly prohibit the kind of pressure tactics used in your case. Maya was about to respond when Williams continued. I'd also like to offer you and your niece first-class tickets for your return flight to Chicago, along with our sincere apologies. Mr. Williams, Maya replied coolly, I have no intention of flying SkyWest again anytime soon. What I want is accountability and meaningful change, not upgrades or miles. I understand, Bertie Brown, Williams said. Is there anything specific you believe would constitute appropriate accountability in this case? Maya had given this considerable thought. Yes. First, I want a formal acknowledgement from the airline that what happened was discriminatory treatment, not just poor service. Second, I want confirmation that the flight attendants involved will face appropriate disciplinary action, not just a slap on the wrist. Third, I want Victoria Whitfield banned from your airline for her behavior. And finally, I want SkyWest to make a substantial donation to an organization focused on racial equity in education. There was a pause as Williams presumably took notes. Those are reasonable requests, Dr. Reynolds. I'll need to consult with our legal and PR teams on the exact wording of any public statement, but I'm committed to addressing each of your points. Maya wasn't entirely convinced. Corporate promises often evaporated once public attention waned. I appreciate that. Mr. Williams, I'll look forward to seeing concrete actions. There's one more thing. Dr. Reynolds, Williams said, his tone shifting slightly. I mentioned I reviewed Captain Rivera's report. He noted that you're the chief of pediatric cardiac surgery at Northwestern Memorial Hospital. That's correct, Maya confirmed, wondering where this was going. What the report didn't mention, what we discovered during our background review, is your niece's full name, Amara Harper Donovan. Maya froze. The significance of the name was unmistakable. Yes, she said carefully. That's her name. Dr. Reynolds, is Amara related to Alexander Donovan, by any chance? The question hung in the air, its implications crystallizing. Alexander Donovan was the founder and chairman of Donovan Holdings, the parent company that had acquired SkyWest Airlines 3 years ago in a much-publicized expansion of its transportation portfolio. Alexander Donovan was one of the most powerful business figures in America, and he was Amara's grandfather. Alexander Donovan is her paternal grandfather, Maya confirmed, her voice deliberately neutral. Her father, Richard Harper, is married to Alexander's son, James. There was a long silence on the line. When Williams spoke again, his voice had changed completely. The polite corporate concern had been replaced by genuine alarm. Dr. Reynolds, I don't know what to say. This changes I want to be absolutely clear that our response would be the same regardless of who, but it wouldn't, would it, Mr. Williams? Maya interrupted, unable to keep the edge from her voice. If you had known Amara was Alexander Donovan's granddaughter before she boarded, she would never have been forced to give up her seat. If you had known who she was, Victoria Whitfield would have been told firmly to sit in her assigned seat. If you had known who she was, Jennifer and Daniel would have bent over backwards to make sure she was comfortable. Williams didn't immediately deny it, which was answer enough. I'll be speaking with Mr. Donovan personally about this matter, he finally said. We will ensure that the response is commensurate with the seriousness of the situation. I'm sure you will, Maya replied coolly. Though it's telling that it took the Donovan name to elevate this from an unfortunate incident to a crisis requiring your personal attention. Dr. Reynolds, I want to assure you that, Maya cut him off. Mr. Williams, I expect to see concrete actions, not just assurances. I'll be watching what happens next very closely. She ended the call and sat for a moment, processing the conversation. The revelation of Amara's connection to Alexander Donovan had clearly changed everything for SkyWest. The discrimination against a random black child was concerning. The same treatment of the granddaughter of the company's owner was catastrophic. Maya had not mentioned the connection to Alexander Donovan in her complaint. She had wanted the airline to address the discrimination on its merits, not because of who Amara was related to, but now that they knew the dynamics had shifted dramatically. She texted Lisa Rodriguez. Just had a call with the COO. They figured out who Amara is related to. Things are about to get very interesting. Lisa's reply came immediately. OMG, spill the tea. Who is she? Her grandfather owns the airline. Maya texted back, a grim satisfaction settling over her. Not directly, but through his holding company. Holy shit, Lisa responded. They are so screwed. Maya put her phone down and went to check on Amara, who was having breakfast with Eleanor. The little girl looked up with a maple syrup smile. Grandma says we can go see the sea lions today. That sounds wonderful, sweet pea, Maya said, dropping a kiss on Amara's forehead. Eleanor caught Maya's eye with a questioning look. How was the call? Enlightening, Maya replied cryptically. I'll fill you in later. As Amara returned to her pancakes, Maya's phone buzzed with a news alert. The headline read, SkyWest Airlines faces backlash over viral video showing black child forced to give up. Seat, the wheels of accountability were turning now, and they were about to spin much faster than anyone at SkyWest could have anticipated. By the time Maya, Amara, and Eleanor were on the ferry to San Francisco, SkyWest Airlines was in full crisis mode. Maya's phone buzzed constantly with updates, news alerts, texts from Lisa, and increasingly urgent emails from SkyWest's executive team. The story had exploded overnight. What had begun as viral social media outrage had transformed into mainstream news coverage. CNN, MSNBC, and even Fox News were running segments on the incident, with analysts and commentators debating the implications for the airline industry and race relations in America. Maya had silenced her phone, determined to give Amara the day of fun she deserved after the previous day's ordeal. The little girl stood at the ferry railing, pointing excitedly as they approached the San Francisco pier. Eleanor stood beside her, one arm protectively around her shoulders. Look, Auntie Maya see lions, Amara called over the wind, pointing to dark shapes lounging on the docks ahead. I see them, sweet pea, Maya replied, momentarily pushing aside thoughts of the brewing corporate storm. As they disembarked and made their way to Pier 39, Maya couldn't help noticing a few people doing double takes as they passed. The viral videos had clearly spread far enough that she and Amara were being recognized. She pulled Amara's hood up gently. It's a bit chilly by the water, she explained when Amara looked up questioningly. The disguise was minimal but effective. They spent the morning watching the sea lions, visiting the aquarium of the bay, and riding the carousel. Amara's laughter was a balm to Maya's soul, washing away some of the bitterness from the previous day. During lunch at a waterfront restaurant, while Amara was distracted by a dessert menu, Maya quickly checked her messages. There were 3 missed calls from Thomas Williams, 2 from SkyWest's PR department, and an email marked urgent from someone named Catherine Beaumont, identified as General Counsel for Donovan Holdings. The news alerts were even more revealing. SkyWest CEO calls emergency board meeting. amid discrimination allegations. Donovan Holdings stock drops 3% following SkyWest controversy. Flight attendants placed on administrative leave after viral video. And most tellingly, sources SkyWest discriminated against granddaughter of company owner. The revelation of Amara's relationship to Alexander Donovan had leaked, likely from someone inside SkyWest desperate to explain the company's frantic response. "Everything okay?" Eleanor asked, noticing Maya's expression. "Just corporate panic," Maya replied quietly. "Nothing that can't wait until we're done having fun." Eleanor nodded approvingly. "That's right. They can sweat a little longer." After lunch, they visited the Exploratorium, where Amara spent hours engrossed in the interactive exhibits. By late afternoon, when they boarded the ferry back to Sausalito, Maya could see that Amara had almost completely bounced back from the previous day's trauma. Children were resilient, far more resilient than adults gave them credit for. As they approached the Sausalito dock, Maya's phone rang again. This time, the caller ID displayed Alexander Donovan. She hesitated, then answered, "Dr. Reynolds speaking." "Dr. Reynolds, this is Alexander Donovan," came a deep, authoritative voice. "I understand there was an incident involving my granddaughter on one of my airlines yesterday." Maya glanced at Amara, who was pointing out boats to Eleanor, then stepped away for privacy. "Yes, Mr. Donovan, there was. I've received multiple briefings today, but I'd value hearing directly from you what occurred. If you're willing to share, of course." Maya provided a concise but thorough account of the incident, keeping her tone professional despite the anger that still simmered beneath the surface. When she finished, there was a heavy silence on the line. Then Donovan spoke, his voice tight with controlled fury. "This is completely unacceptable. I'm ashamed that it happened on an airline bearing my company's name." "It was certainly illuminating," Maya replied carefully. "Dr. Reynolds, I'd like to meet with you and Amara tomorrow, if that's possible. I'm flying into San Francisco tonight specifically to address this situation. Would noon at my office be convenient?" Maya considered the request. "Mr. Donovan, I appreciate your concern, but I brought Amara to San Francisco to visit her grandparents and enjoy the city, not to deal with corporate drama. I'm reluctant to expose her to more stress over this incident." "I understand completely," Donovan replied without hesitation. "In that case, would you be willing to meet with me alone? I promise not to take much of your vacation time, but I believe this conversation would be valuable." Maya agreed to meet him at 9 a.m., early enough that Amara wouldn't miss much of their planned day. When they arrived back at the house, James was waiting with dinner preparations well underway. While Eleanor helped Amara wash up, Maya filled her father in on the day's developments. "Alexander Donovan himself wants to meet with me tomorrow morning," she concluded. James raised an eyebrow. "The Alexander Donovan. This has certainly escalated quickly." "It has," Maya agreed. "Though I can't help feeling that none of this would be happening if Amara were just any little black girl and not the granddaughter of a billionaire." "You're absolutely right," James said without hesitation. "And that's exactly why you need to use this opportunity to push for systemic change, not just individual consequences." Maya nodded thoughtfully. "That's my plan. This isn't just about getting a few employees fired or extracting an apology. It's about changing how they operate, how they train their staff, how they address bias." "Exactly," James said. "Make them commit to specific, measurable changes, not just corporate platitudes." The evening passed pleasantly, with board games and Maya's favorite childhood dessert, her mother's homemade peach cobbler. Amara was cheerful and engaged, seemingly recovered from the previous day's ordeal. But as Maya tucked her in that night, Amara's question revealed that the incident was still on her mind. "Auntie Maya, is something happening because of what happened on the plane?" Maya considered how to respond. She believed in being honest with children without overwhelming them with adult concerns. "Yes, sweet pea, the airline is taking what happened very seriously, and they're making changes to make sure it doesn't happen to anyone else." Amara nodded solemnly. "Good, it wasn't fair." "No, it wasn't," Maya agreed. "And when something isn't fair, it's important to speak up about it." "Like you did," Amara said, snuggling deeper under her blanket. "Like I did," Maya confirmed, kissing her forehead. "Sweet dreams. Brave girl." The next morning, Maya dressed carefully for her meeting with Alexander Donovan. She chose a tailored navy pantsuit that projected professionalism without being ostentatious. This wasn't about impressing a billionaire. It was about advocating for change. The offices of Donovan Holdings occupied the top floors of a sleek high-rise in San Francisco's financial district. Maya was escorted by a polite receptionist through security and up to the executive floor, where she was shown into a corner office with panoramic views of the bay. Alexander Donovan rose from behind his desk as she entered. He was tall and imposing, with silver hair and piercing blue eyes that his son James had inherited. Despite being in his late 60s, he moved with the energy of a much younger man, his custom suit fitting impeccably on his athletic frame. "Dr. Reynolds, thank you for coming," he said, extending his hand. "I can't express how disturbed I am by what happened to you and Amara. Thank you for making the time to meet, Mr. Donovan," Maya replied, shaking his hand firmly. He gestured for her to take a seat in one of the comfortable chairs arranged in a small seating area, rather than across his intimidating desk. It was a subtle but deliberate choice to create a more equal dynamic. "I've spent the last 18 hours reviewing everything related to this incident," Donovan began. "The videos, the flight manifests, the crew statements, the social media response, everything. I've also had separate conversations with the CEO and COO of SkyWest, as well as their head of HR and general counsel." Maya nodded but remained silent, waiting to hear where this was going. "What happened to you and Amara was inexcusable on every level," Donovan continued, his tone grave. "It represents a complete failure of training, judgment, and basic human decency. I'm both personally and professionally appalled." "I appreciate that, Mr. Donovan," Maya replied, "but I'm more interested in what happens next than in expressions of regret, no matter how sincere." Donovan nodded, seemingly appreciating her directness. "Of course, I've already taken several immediate actions. Jennifer Morgan and Daniel Wilson have been terminated, effective immediately. Victoria Whitfield has been permanently banned from all Donovan Holdings transportation services, not just SkyWest, but our rail and cruise lines as well." He paused, making sure Maya was registering the information. "But those are just individual consequences. They don't address the systemic issues that allowed this to happen in the first place." Maya leaned forward slightly, her interest piqued. Donovan was acknowledging the very concerns she had planned to raise. "I've directed SkyWest to implement a comprehensive overhaul of their training programs, with a specific focus on implicit bias and conflict resolution." Donovan continued, "I've also ordered an independent audit of their customer service practices, to be conducted by a diversity and inclusion firm with expertise in the transportation industry." "That sounds promising," Maya acknowledged. "But what mechanisms will be in place to ensure these changes are actually implemented and maintained?" "A fair question," Donovan conceded. "I'm establishing a permanent passenger advocacy office within SkyWest, reporting directly to the board rather than to management. This office will have the authority to review and override any crew decisions related to passenger treatment, and will publish quarterly reports on customer complaints and resolutions, with specific attention to potential bias incidents." Maya was impressed despite herself. These were substantive changes with real accountability mechanisms. "Additionally, Donovan continued, I've approved a $5 million donation to the National Center for Education Equity to fund programs specifically focused on helping children of color recognize and respond to discrimination." This last announcement caught Maya by surprise. The organization was one she had supported personally for years, and the amount was substantial enough to make a meaningful difference. "That's a significant commitment," she acknowledged. "It's the minimum we should do." Donovan replied simply, "What happened to Amara was a symptom of a much larger problem. We can't fix everything, but we can take concrete steps to address the specific failures that occurred under our watch." Maya studied him for a moment. "Mr. Donovan, may I ask a direct question?" "Of course. Would all of this be happening if Amara weren't your granddaughter?" Donovan didn't flinch from the question. Honestly, probably not at this scale or with this speed. And that's precisely the problem. The fact that it takes a connection to power to prompt this level of response is exactly why these systemic changes are necessary. His candor was refreshing. Maya had expected corporate deflection, not acknowledgement of privilege. "I appreciate your honesty," she said, "and I believe these changes could make a real difference. But the core issue remains. People of color shouldn't need a billionaire relative to be treated with basic dignity and respect. I couldn't agree more, Donovan said gravely, which is why I want to ask for your help. My help, Maya echoed, surprised. Yes, I'd like you to consider serving as a special advisor to the new passenger advocacy office. Your expertise as a physician who deals with vulnerable patients, combined with your personal experience in this incident, would be invaluable in shaping how we address these issues going forward. Maya hadn't expected this turn in the conversation. I'm flattered by the offer, Mr. Donovan, but I have a demanding career in Chicago. I'm not looking to take on additional responsibilities. I understand, Donovan said. The position would be largely advisory, with quarterly meetings that could be conducted virtually. Your input would help ensure that these changes actually address the real issues, not just what executives think the issues are. Maya considered the proposal. There was merit in having someone with first-hand experience of discrimination involved in shaping the response. Yet she was wary of being used as a token, a public relations shield for an airline trying to recover from a discrimination scandal. I'll need to think about it, she said finally. But regardless of my decision on that front, I want to see public acknowledgement of what happened, not just internal changes. Already in progress, Donovan assured her. SkyWest will be issuing a public statement this afternoon, acknowledging the discriminatory treatment and outlining the steps being taken in response. No corporate doublespeak, no evasion of responsibility. As the meeting continued, they discussed specific details of the planned changes. Donovan was surprisingly knowledgeable about diversity and inclusion practices and open to Maya's suggestions for strengthening the proposed initiatives. By the time she left his office an hour later, Maya felt cautiously optimistic. The response was more substantive than she had dared to hope for, though she remained skeptical about how much would actually be implemented once public attention faded. As she stepped out of the building into the San Francisco sunshine, her phone buzzed with a news alert. Breaking: SkyWest Airlines announces termination of employees involved in discrimination incident, unveils sweeping policy changes. The corporate machinery was moving with unprecedented speed. Maya hailed a ride back to Sausalito, ready to rejoin Amara for their day of sightseeing. The battle for accountability was being won, but the war for lasting change was just beginning. The remainder of Maya and Amara's visit to San Francisco passed pleasantly, unmarred by further drama. They visited the California Academy of Sciences, rode cable cars up and down the city's famous hills, and spent a day exploring Muir Woods. Through it all, Maya made a conscious effort to minimize her attention to the ongoing fallout from the SkyWest incident, focusing instead on creating joyful memories with Amara. Nevertheless, the repercussions continued to unfold. SkyWest's public statement had been forthright, acknowledging that Maya and Amara had experienced discriminatory treatment that violated both our policies and our values. The company detailed the termination of Jennifer Morgan and Daniel Wilson, the banning of Victoria Whitfield, and the sweeping policy changes being implemented to prevent similar incidents in the future. The media coverage remained intense. Industry analysts dissected the implications for SkyWest and the broader airline industry. Civil rights organizations praised the response, but questioned whether it would have been as robust if the victim hadn't been connected to the company's owner. Social media continued to circulate Lisa's videos, which had now been viewed over 20 million times. On their last day in Sausalito, while Amara was helping Eleanor bake cookies, Maya received an unexpected call from Catherine Beaumont, the general counsel of Donovan Holdings. Dr. Reynolds, I hope I'm not interrupting your vacation. Beaumont began after introducing herself. I wanted to touch base with you regarding the final arrangements for your return flight to Chicago. Maya had deliberately avoided thinking about the return journey. What arrangements? Mr. Donovan has arranged for private transportation for you and Amara back to Chicago. Beaumont explained. A car will pick you up tomorrow morning and take you directly to a private hangar at SFO, where a corporate jet will be waiting. Maya was momentarily speechless. A private jet was certainly not what she had anticipated. That's very generous, she finally managed, but entirely unnecessary. We can book commercial flights on another airline. Mr. Donovan was quite insistent, Beaumont replied. He feels strongly that after what happened, you and Amara shouldn't have to deal with commercial air travel for this trip. The jet was coming back to Chicago anyway for another executive, so it's really not an imposition. Maya considered the offer. While she was generally uncomfortable with such extravagance, The thought of sparing Amara any potential recognition or attention on a commercial flight was appealing. The incident had received enough publicity that they might well be recognized. "All right," she conceded. "Please thank Mr. Donovan for his thoughtfulness." After ending the call, Maya joined her family in the kitchen, where the sweet aroma of fresh-baked cookies filled the air. Amara, her face dusted with flour, looked up with a proud smile. "Auntie Maya Grandma let me add the chocolate chips all by myself." "I can see that, sweet pea," Maya laughed, noting the generous distribution of chocolate throughout the cookies cooling on the rack. "You were very thorough." Eleanor wiped her hands on her apron. "Who was on the phone, dear?" Maya explained the arrangements for their return journey, expecting her mother to share her ambivalence about the private jet. Instead, Eleanor nodded approvingly. "Good. After what you two went through, you deserve a stress-free trip home." "It seems excessive," Maya protested mildly. "It seems appropriate," James countered, entering the kitchen and helping himself to a warm cookie. "Alexander Donovan can certainly afford it, and it sends a message about how seriously he's taking this situation." Maya couldn't argue with that logic. The gesture was symbolic, a tangible demonstration of Donovan's commitment to making amends. The next morning, as promised, a sleek black car arrived to take them to the airport. The driver was professional and discreet, handling their luggage efficiently and maintaining a respectful distance as they said their goodbyes to James and Eleanor. Amara hugged her grandparents tightly, extracting promises of a visit to Chicago soon. Maya embraced her parents, whispering thanks for their support and wisdom during what had turned into a much more eventful visit than any of them had anticipated. "Remember what we talked about," James murmured as he hugged his daughter. "Use this opportunity to create real change, not just momentary consequences." "I will, Dad," Maya promised. "I already am." The drive to SFO was quick and comfortable. Instead of the main terminals, they were directed to a separate facility reserved for private aviation. The contrast with their departure from O'Hare couldn't have been more striking. No crowded security lines, no overpriced food courts, no harried gate agents. A smartly dressed woman met them at the entrance. "Dr. Reynolds, Harper, I'm Stephanie Walsh, your flight attendant for today. Welcome to SkyWest Executive Aviation." Maya was surprised by the SkyWest connection, having assumed the jet would be from Donovan Holdings directly. Stephanie seemed to anticipate her reaction. "SkyWest Executive Aviation is a separate division from the commercial airline," she explained smoothly. "We handle private charters for corporate clients, primarily Donovan Holdings executives." She led them through a private security screening, conducted with efficiency and respect, then out onto the tarmac where a sleek Gulfstream jet awaited, its engines already humming in preparation for departure. Amara's eyes widened. "Is that our plane? The whole thing?" "It sure is," Stephanie confirmed with a warm smile. "And we're all ready for you. Captain Garcia and First Officer Patel are completing the final checks now." As they boarded the aircraft, Maya was struck by the luxurious interior. Plush leather seats, polished wood tables, and state-of-the-art entertainment systems created an atmosphere more reminiscent of a high-end living room than an airplane cabin. "Wow," Amara breathed, taking it all in. "This is so much nicer than the other plane." "It certainly is," Maya agreed, settling into one of the comfortable seats. "This is how people like Grandpa Alexander travel all the time." "Lucky," Amara declared, already investigating the tablet built into the armrest of her seat. Stephanie approached with a professional smile. "We'll be taking off in about 15 minutes. Can I get you anything before we depart? We have a full breakfast service prepared, or I can bring you drinks now if you prefer." "Some water would be nice, thank you," Maya replied. "Amara, would you like some juice?" "Apple juice, please," Amara requested enthusiastically. As Stephanie moved to the galley to prepare their drinks, Maya noticed a man in a pilot's uniform approaching from the cockpit. His captain's stripes and confident bearing identified him immediately. "Dr. Reynolds, Captain Miguel Rivera," he introduced himself. "I wanted to welcome you aboard personally." Maya recognized him immediately. The same Captain Rivera who had supported her during the original incident. "Captain Rivera," she acknowledged with surprise. "I didn't expect to see you again. I specifically requested this flight when I learned you would be traveling back to Chicago," he explained. "I wanted the opportunity to apologize in person for what happened under my command. Although I wasn't aware of the situation until after it had escalated, the ultimate responsibility for passenger experience rests with the captain. His sincerity was evident, and Maya appreciated the gesture. Thank you, Captain Rivera. I never held you responsible. In fact, I was grateful for your support when you did become aware of the situation. Rivera nodded, then turned to Amara with a warm smile. And you must be Amara. Would you like to see the cockpit before we take off? Amara's face lit up. Can I? Auntie Maya, please. Maya nodded her permission, and Captain Rivera escorted an excited Amara to the cockpit, where she could be heard asking rapid-fire questions about all the instruments and controls. Stephanie returned with their drinks, setting them carefully on the side tables. We'll be taking off shortly. After that, we have about a 4-hour flight time to Chicago. I'll serve breakfast once we reach cruising altitude, and there are snacks and refreshments available throughout the flight. If you need anything at all, just press this button. The level of service was impeccable, attentive without being intrusive, professional without being cold. Maya couldn't help but contrast it with Jennifer's hostile attitude during their original flight. Amara returned from the cockpit bubbling with excitement. Captain Rivera showed me everything. He even let me wear his hat for a picture. That sounds wonderful, sweet pea. Maya smiled. Did you thank him? Yes, and he said maybe I can be a pilot when I grow up if I study hard in math and science. You absolutely could, Maya agreed. You can be anything you want to be. The takeoff was smooth and efficient. Once they reached cruising altitude, Stephanie served a breakfast that would have put most fine dining restaurants to shame. Fresh fruit, gourmet omelets, pastries still warm from the oven. As they ate, Maya reflected on the extraordinary contrast between this journey and their original flight. The difference wasn't just in the luxury of private aviation versus commercial travel. It was in the fundamental attitude toward them as passengers. Here, they were treated with respect, attention, and care. On the SkyWest commercial flight, they had been treated as inconveniences, obstacles to be moved aside for more valued customers. The difference, Maya knew, wasn't just about the setting or even the training of the staff. It was about perception. On this flight, they were perceived as valued clients deserving of the highest service standards. On the commercial flight, they had been perceived as expendable, their comfort and dignity subordinate to that of a white woman and her son. After breakfast, Amara settled in to watch a movie on the advanced entertainment system, while Maya used the opportunity to check her email. Among the usual work correspondence was a message from Alexander Donovan, sent that morning Dr. Reynolds. I hope this finds you and Amara enjoying a comfortable journey back to Chicago. I wanted to update you on developments since our meeting. The board of SkyWest Airlines met yesterday in an emergency session to approve the changes we discussed. The Passenger Advocacy Office has been formally established, with initial staffing to begin next month. The mandatory training programs on implicit bias and conflict resolution will commence next week for all customer-facing employees. Additionally, I've accepted the resignation of Thomas Williams, the COO who initially handled your complaint. While he eventually took appropriate action, his initial response was inadequate, particularly his attempt to placate you with bonus miles rather than addressing the root issues. The donation to the National Center for Education Equity has been processed, and I've attached confirmation for your records. Finally, I want to reiterate my invitation for you to serve as a special advisor to the new Passenger Advocacy Office. Your perspective would be invaluable in ensuring these changes create meaningful improvements in how our airlines treat all passengers, particularly those from marginalized communities. Whether or not you choose to accept that role, I want to thank you for your grace and dignity throughout this difficult situation. You turned what could have been just another incident of discrimination into a catalyst for substantial change. Wishing you and Amara a safe journey home. Alexander Donovan. Maya read the email twice, processing the information. Williams had resigned, or more likely, been asked to resign. The promised changes were moving forward quickly, not languishing in corporate limbo, as she had half expected. The donation had already been made, not just promised. Most surprising was the continued invitation to serve as an advisor. Maya had assumed it was a gesture made in the moment, not a serious proposal. The fact that Donovan was pursuing it suggested genuine commitment to the changes being implemented. She began composing a reply, thanking Donovan for the update and expressing cautious optimism about the changes. Regarding the advisory role, She promised to give it serious consideration and respond within the week. As she was about to send the email, another notification appeared. A breaking news alert from the Wall Street Journal. SkyWest Airlines announces major overhaul following discrimination incident. CEO promises complete culture change. The accompanying article detailed the planned changes, quoting CEO Michael Brandon's commitment to transforming how we train our staff, how we resolve conflicts, and how we ensure every passenger is treated with dignity and respect. The statement went beyond corporate platitudes, outlining specific steps and measurable outcomes. It acknowledged that the incident involving Maya and Amara had exposed systemic failures in our approach to customer service and conflict resolution, particularly as they relate to passengers of color. Maya was impressed, despite her lingering skepticism. Corporate America was adept at making the right noises in response to public relations crises, but actual change was rarer. Still, the specificity of the commitments and the speed with which they were being implemented suggested this might be more than the usual damage control. Auntie Maya, look, Amara called, interrupting her thoughts. They have ice cream sundaes on the menu. Maya smiled, setting aside her phone to focus on her niece. Is that so? Well, I think a vacation calls for ice cream, don't you? The remainder of the flight passed pleasantly. Stephanie was attentive without being intrusive, ensuring they had everything they needed without hovering. Captain Rivera came back once to check on them, chatting amiably with Amara about her favorite parts of San Francisco. As they began their descent into Chicago, Maya felt a complex mix of emotions. The vacation had been marred by the discrimination incident, yet that very incident had sparked what appeared to be meaningful change. Amara had been hurt, yet she had also witnessed her aunt standing up for what was right and seeing results. Most importantly, Maya had reinforced for Amara a lesson she hoped would stay with her throughout her life, that her dignity was not negotiable, that she deserved to take up space in the world, and that speaking truth to power could create real change. As the wheels touched down on the runway at O'Hare, Maya squeezed Amara's hand. Home sweet home, sweet pea, Amara smiled back. That was the best plane ride ever. It certainly was, Maya agreed. And you know what, I think it's only going to get better from here. The jet taxied to the private aviation terminal, where a car was already waiting to take them home. As they disembarked, Captain Rivera and Stephanie standing at the door to bid them farewell. Maya reflected on the journey they had taken, not just from San Francisco to Chicago, but from discrimination to accountability, from injustice to change. It wasn't a perfect ending. One incident of accountability didn't solve the broader issues of racial bias in America, but it was a start, a small victory in a much larger struggle. And for now, seeing Amara descend the airplane steps with her head held high, that victory felt significant indeed. 3 months after the incident on Flight 937, Maya sat in her office at Northwestern Memorial Hospital, reviewing a complex case file for an upcoming surgery. Her phone buzzed with a calendar reminder, PAO quarterly meeting, 3:00 p.m. Maya had ultimately accepted the role of special advisor to SkyWest's new passenger advocacy office. Her initial reluctance had given way to the realization that her voice could help shape meaningful change within the airline industry. The position required minimal time commitment, quarterly meetings, occasional consultations, but offered significant influence over policy development and implementation. Today's meeting would be virtual, allowing her to participate from her office between surgeries. As 3:00 p.m. approached, Maya closed her case files and prepared for the video call, precisely on time. Her screen filled with faces. The newly appointed head of the Passenger Advocacy Office, Elena Ramirez, SkyWest's new Chief Diversity Officer, Marcus Johnson, representatives from HR, Legal, and Training, and Alexander Donovan himself, who made a point of attending these quarterly meetings despite his busy schedule. Good afternoon, everyone, Elena began. Thank you all for joining our first quarterly review of the Passenger Advocacy Office initiatives. As you know, we've been operational for just over 2 months now, and we have some preliminary data to share regarding our impact and ongoing challenges. The presentation that followed was detailed and substantive. The PAO had processed 147 passenger complaints in its first 2 months, identifying patterns and systemic issues that had previously gone unaddressed. Training programs on implicit bias and conflict resolution had been completed by 78% of customer-facing staff, with measurable improvements in customer satisfaction scores, particularly among passengers of color. We're seeing a 23% reduction in escalated conflicts related to seating assignments, Marcus reported, and a 31% increase in positive feedback from passengers regarding how disputes are handled when they do occur. As the presentation continued, Maya was struck by the apparent sincerity of the effort. This wasn't just corporate window dressing. These were meaningful changes with measurable outcomes. The incident involving her and Amara had genuinely sparked a transformation within SkyWest. When it came time for Maya to provide her input as special advisor, she was candid but constructive. "The progress so far is encouraging," she acknowledged. "But I remain concerned about the sustainability of these changes once public attention fades. What mechanisms are in place to ensure continued compliance with the new policies a year from now, 5 years from now?" It was a challenging question, but one that needed to be addressed. Elena and her team responded with substantive answers about accountability structures, ongoing data collection, and integration of the new procedures into performance evaluations at all levels. Alexander Donovan added his own perspective. "Dr. Reynolds raises a critical point. Sustainable change requires more than initial enthusiasm. That's why we've built these reforms into the corporate structure itself, with direct reporting to the board and regular external audits." The meeting continued for another hour, diving deep into specific policies and procedures. Maya's medical expertise proved unexpectedly valuable, as she drew parallels between hospital protocols for ensuring consistent patient care and the airline's need for consistent passenger treatment regardless of individual staff biases. As the meeting concluded, Donovan asked Maya to stay on the call for a brief private conversation. Once the others had signed off, he addressed her directly. "Dr. Reynolds, I wanted to share something with you that isn't yet public knowledge. Jennifer Morgan and Daniel Wilson have filed a wrongful termination lawsuit against SkyWest." Maya wasn't entirely surprised. "On what grounds?" "They're claiming they followed standard industry protocols for resolving seating disputes and that their termination was disproportionate to any procedural violations." Donovan explained, "They're also suggesting that the company's response was driven by your connection to me, rather than by the merits of the situation itself. There's some truth to that last part." Maya acknowledged candidly. Donovan nodded. "Indeed, but their argument fundamentally misses the point. Even if they believed they were following protocols, those protocols themselves were flawed and enabled discriminatory treatment. That's why we've changed them." "How do you plan to respond to the lawsuit?" "Our legal team is preparing a robust defense," Donovan assured her. "But I wanted you to be aware in case you're approached by the media or their attorneys. You're under no obligation to engage with either." "I appreciate the heads up," Maya said. "Though I'm confident my documentation of the incident will speak for itself." After ending the call, Maya reflected on this new development. The lawsuit was unfortunate but predictable. Jennifer and Daniel likely saw themselves as scapegoats, unable to recognize their own role in perpetuating a discriminatory system. Their inability to accept accountability was telling, and all too common. Maya's phone buzzed with a text from Lisa Rodriguez, who had become something of a friend since the incident. "Just saw this story about SkyWest's new training programs. Your impact is still rippling outward." Attached was a link to an article in Travel Weekly discussing how SkyWest's reforms were influencing other airlines to review their own policies on conflict resolution and bias training. The industry was taking note, recognizing that what happened to Maya and Amara could easily have occurred on any airline. Maya smiled slightly as she read the article. This was precisely what her father had encouraged her to pursue. Not just individual consequences, but systemic change that would benefit countless passengers who would never know her name or Amara's. Later that evening, as Maya helped Amara with her homework at the kitchen table of their Chicago apartment, she noticed a different quality to her niece's demeanor. In the months since the incident, Amara had developed a subtle but unmistakable confidence, a certainty about her place in the world and her right to occupy it. "Ms. Peterson said my science project was the best in the class," Amara announced proudly, showing Maya the A+ marked on her report. "She's going to enter it in the district science fair." "That's wonderful. Sweet pea, I'm so proud of you," Maya replied, genuinely impressed by Amara's work on the effects of different liquids on plant growth. "A boy in my class said I only got picked because I'm a girl," Amara continued matter-of-factly. "But I told him I got picked because my project was the best, and if he worked harder on his, maybe he'd get picked next time." Maya couldn't help but laugh at Amara's forthright response. What did he say to that? Nothing, he just walked away. Amara shrugged, returning to her math homework. The exchange might seem minor, but to Maya it represented something profound. Amara wasn't internalizing the slight or questioning her achievement. She was confidently asserting her worth, refusing to let someone else's bias diminish her accomplishment. Maya thought back to that heartbreaking question on the plane. Was it because I'm brown? And marveled at how Amara had processed and integrated that difficult lesson. She hadn't become bitter or fearful. She had become more sure of herself, more ready to stand her ground. Perhaps that was the most significant outcome of the entire SkyWest incident. Beyond the corporate reforms, beyond the policy changes and training programs, beyond even the public accountability, there was this one little girl learning that she deserved respect, that she could speak up for herself, and that doing so could create change. As Maya helped Amara with a particularly challenging math problem, her phone buzzed with an email notification. It was from Elena Ramirez, sharing a preliminary draft of the Passenger Bill of Rights that SkyWest was preparing to implement. The document outlined in clear, unambiguous terms what passengers could expect from the airline, including specific protections against discriminatory treatment. Maya skimmed the document, noting with satisfaction that it specifically addressed assigned seating rights and prohibited crew members from pressuring passengers to give up their legitimate seats to accommodate others' preferences. The language was strong, the commitments clear, and most importantly, the accountability mechanisms were robust. It wasn't perfect, no corporate policy ever could be, but it represented meaningful progress. Progress that had begun with one woman refusing to let her niece be treated as less than, refusing to accept discrimination as the cost of convenience. Auntie Maya, Amara's voice pulled her attention back to the kitchen table. Yes, sweet pea. Remember when that lady made us move on the airplane? Maya set down her phone, giving Amara her full attention. Yes, I remember. I'm glad you didn't just let her win, Amara said thoughtfully. Even though we had to move that time, you made sure she didn't really win in the end. Maya reached across the table and squeezed Amara's hand. That's exactly right. Sometimes we have to choose our battles carefully, but that doesn't mean we ever stop fighting for what's right. Amara nodded, returning to her homework with renewed determination. In that moment, Maya knew that regardless of corporate reforms or policy changes, the most important outcome of the SkyWest incident was sitting right across from her, a young black girl learning that her dignity was non-negotiable, that standing up for herself mattered, and that justice, while sometimes delayed, was worth pursuing. That lesson would serve Amara long after the SkyWest controversy faded from public memory. And for Maya, that was the most meaningful victory of all. 1 year to the day after the incident on SkyWest Flight 937, Maya and Amara stood in the gleaming terminal of O'Hare International Airport, preparing to board another flight to San Francisco. This time, they were traveling on SkyWest Airlines by choice, a decision Maya had made deliberately after careful consideration. Are you sure about this, Auntie Maya? Amara asked, eyeing the SkyWest gate with a hint of apprehension. We could have all flown on a different airline. Maya knelt to Amara's eye level, adjusting the collar of her niece's bright yellow jacket. I'm sure, sweet pea. Sometimes the only way to heal completely is to face the thing that hurt you and see that it's changed. And SkyWest has changed a lot since last year. Indeed, the transformation was evident even in the physical environment of the gate area. New signage prominently displayed the Passenger Bill of Rights, including specific language about seating assignments and non-discrimination policies. The gate agents wore badges with the phrase "Every passenger matters" beneath the SkyWest logo. I guess, Amara said, though she still looked uncertain. But what if there's another mean lady who wants my seat? Then we'll handle it differently than last time, Maya assured her. But I don't think that will happen. Look around. Everything's different now. The changes weren't just cosmetic. As they had checked in, Maya had noticed the new conflict resolution protocols posted at the service counter. Gate agents and flight attendants had undergone comprehensive training in de-escalation techniques and bias recognition. The airline's entire approach to passenger interactions had been restructured based in part on Maya's recommendations as special advisor to the Passenger Advocacy Office. Good morning, Dr. Reynolds, Miss Harper, greeted the gate agent as they approached the boarding area. We're delighted to have you with us today. Boarding will begin in about 15 minutes, but you're welcome to board early if you'd prefer. Maya had deliberately not used her connection to Alexander Donovan when booking the tickets, but her name was evidently flagged in the system. She appreciated the courtesy but declined the early boarding offer. This trip would be as normal as possible, a test of whether the system had truly changed for everyone, not just for those with special status. We'll board with our assigned group. Thank you, she replied with a polite smile, but I appreciate the offer. As they waited, Amara pulled out the new book her grandfather James had given her, a colorfully illustrated volume about famous women scientists throughout history. At 10 years old, she was becoming an avid reader with particular interest in STEM subjects. Maya watched her with quiet pride, marveling at her growth over the past year. The incident on Flight 937 could have diminished Amara, made her smaller and more afraid to take up space in the world. Instead, it had somehow strengthened her. She had witnessed her aunt standing up for what was right, seen genuine accountability in action, and learned that her dignity was worth fighting for. Boarding will now begin for SkyWest Flight 415 to San Francisco, announced the gate agent. We'll start with our passengers needing special assistance, families with young children, and active military personnel. As the boarding process began, Maya noticed the deliberate care the gate agents took with each passenger, making eye contact, offering assistance when needed, treating everyone with the same level of respect. It was a small thing, perhaps, but significant in its consistency. When their boarding group was called, Maya and Amara joined the line. The gate agent scanning boarding passes greeted each passenger by name, including them. Dr. Reynolds, Miss Harper, welcome aboard. You're in seats 14A and 14B. Enjoy your flight. The same seats they had originally booked on that fateful flight a year ago. Maya had chosen them deliberately, a symbolic reclaiming of what had been taken from them. As they made their way down the jet bridge, Amara squeezed Maya's hand. I'm a little nervous, she admitted. That's okay, Maya assured her. It's normal to feel nervous after what happened, but we're going to make new, better memories this time. They boarded the aircraft and found their seats without incident. Amara took the window seat, her rightful place, and immediately pressed her face to the glass to watch the ground crew at work. Maya stowed their carry-on bags in the overhead compartment and settled into the aisle seat beside her. The flight attendant working their section approached with a warm smile. Good morning, my name is Rachel, and I'll be taking care of you today. Can I get you anything before we take off? There was no hint of the dismissive attitude Jennifer had displayed a year ago. Rachel's demeanor was genuinely welcoming to all passengers, not just those she perceived as important or valuable. We're fine for now, thank you, Maya replied. But my niece might want some apple juice once we're in the air. Absolutely, I'll bring that as soon as we reach cruising altitude, Rachel assured them before moving on to assist other passengers. As the boarding continued, Maya observed the flight attendants' interactions with other passengers. The consistency in their approach was notable. Every passenger received the same level of courtesy and attention, regardless of appearance or status. When the aircraft was fully boarded and preparing for departure, the lead flight attendant made an announcement that hadn't been part of the standard script a year ago. Ladies and gentlemen, SkyWest Airlines is committed to ensuring a safe, comfortable, and respectful environment for all passengers. We believe that every person on this aircraft deserves to be treated with dignity and courtesy. If you have any concerns during your flight, please don't hesitate to speak with any member of our crew. It was a small addition to the safety briefing, but its implications were significant. The airline was publicly acknowledging its commitment to equal treatment, a direct result of the reforms implemented after the incident with Maya and Amara. The flight itself was uneventful, exactly as a flight should be. Amara enjoyed her window seat, pointing out cloud formations and landmarks as they flew westward. The service was attentive but not intrusive. When a minor dispute arose between two passengers over overhead bin space, it was resolved quickly and fairly by the flight attendants without drama or bias. Midway through the flight, the captain's voice came over the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Sofia Vasquez from the flight deck. We're currently cruising at 35,000 feet over Nebraska, and we expect to arrive in San Francisco right on schedule. The weather in the Bay Area is clear and sunny, with temperatures in the mid-70s. Perfect conditions for enjoying the Golden Gate Bridge and other sights. The normality of it all was comforting, flying as it should, without discrimination or drama. Just a smooth journey from one place to another. As they began their descent into San Francisco, Amara turned to Maya with a smile that contained equal parts excitement and relief. This was a good flight, Auntie Maya. Much better than last time. It certainly was, sweet pea, Maya agreed. And you know why it was better, Amara thought for a moment, then replied with surprising insight. Because we stood up for what was right, and they listened and changed things. Maya nodded, impressed by her niece's perception. That's exactly right. One person speaking up can make a difference, especially when others listen and learn. As the plane touched down at SFO and taxied to the gate, Maya reflected on the journey they had taken over the past year. Not just the physical distance between Chicago and San Francisco, but the emotional and societal distance between discrimination and accountability, between injustice and change. The SkyWest incident had been painful, but its resolution had created a ripple effect far beyond their personal experience. The airline had implemented systemic changes that benefited countless passengers. Other airlines had followed suit, recognizing that what happened to Maya and Amara could easily happen on their flights as well if they didn't address the underlying issues of bias and discrimination. Most importantly, Amara had learned a powerful lesson about standing up for herself and for what was right. She had witnessed firsthand that speaking truth to power could create meaningful change, even in the face of initial resistance. As they deplaned, Rachel, the flight attendant, smiled at them. Thank you for flying with us today. Dr. Reynolds, Miss Harper, I hope you have a wonderful stay in San Francisco. Thank you, Maya replied sincerely. It was a pleasant journey. James and Eleanor were waiting for them at baggage claim, eager to begin another 10-day visit filled with adventures. As they drove across the Golden Gate Bridge towards Sausalito, Amara excitedly told her grandparents about the flight. And nobody tried to take my seat, she concluded triumphantly. And the flight attendants were nice to everybody, not just the important people. James caught Maya's eye in the rearview mirror, his expression a mixture of pride and satisfaction. They both knew what this successful flight represented, not just a personal victory, but a small step toward a world where every person was treated with equal dignity and respect. Later that evening, as Amara helped Eleanor prepare dinner, James took Maya aside in his study. I read about the changes you've helped implement at SkyWest, he said. The passenger Bill of Rights, the bias training programs, the accountability structures. It's impressive work. It's just a beginning, Maya replied modestly. One airline making changes doesn't solve the broader issues of discrimination in our society. No, James agreed. But it's a meaningful start. And more importantly, look at what it's done for Amara. They both glanced through the open door to the kitchen, where Amara was confidently explaining to Eleanor how she had calculated the cooking time for the roast based on its weight, a practical application of the mathematics she loved. She's blossomed this past year, Maya acknowledged, more confident, more willing to speak up for herself. Because she saw you do it first, James pointed out. You showed her that her dignity matters, that she deserves to take up a space in the world, and that standing up for what's right can create real change. Maya nodded, recognizing the truth in her father's words. The incident on Flight 937 could have left Amara feeling diminished and powerless. Instead, through Maya's example and the accountability that followed, it had empowered her. That's the greatest victory in all of this, Maya said softly. Not the policy changes or the corporate reforms, but the impact on one little girl's sense of herself and her place in the world. James squeezed her shoulder affectionately. One person can make a difference. Maya, you always have. As they joined Amara and Eleanor in the kitchen, Maya felt a sense of closure that had been building throughout the day. The return to SkyWest Airlines, the successful flight, the visible changes in policies and procedures, all of it represented a healing of the wound that had been inflicted a year ago. The discrimination they had faced hadn't been erased. It had happened, and its memory would always remain, but it had been acknowledged, addressed, and transformed into a catalyst for positive change. That transformation represented the best kind of resolution, not forgetting or dismissing the injustice, but using it to create a better future for those who would come after. For Maya, watching Amara confidently set the table, chattering about her science project and her plans for the summer, that future was already taking shape in the most meaningful way possible in the life of a young girl who now knew, without doubt, that she deserved a seat at the table, a voice in the conversation, and a place in the world that was hers by right, not by permission. And that knowledge, more than any corporate policy or public statement, was the true measure of healing and resolution. 2 years after the incident on SkyWest Flight 937, Maya stood at the podium in a conference room at Northwestern Memorial Hospital, addressing a group of medical students and residents. Her topic was Advocacy in Medicine Beyond the Hospital Walls, part of a lecture series she had developed on healthcare equity and patient advocacy. The skills that make you effective advocates for your patients in clinical settings can and should extend beyond the hospital. She explained, as medical professionals, our voices carry weight, our documentation matters, and our analytical approach to problem solving can be powerful tools for creating change in broader social contexts. From the back of the room, a hand went up. Dr. Reynolds, is it true that your advocacy work with airlines began with a personal experience of discrimination? Maya nodded. Yes, though I didn't set out to become an advocate for airline passengers. Sometimes circumstances thrust us into roles we didn't anticipate. She briefly recounted the incident with Amara, focusing not on the discrimination itself, but on the methodical way she had documented it and pushed for accountability. She emphasized the parallels between patient advocacy and broader social advocacy, the importance of precise documentation, clear communication, and systematic follow-up. The most important lesson, she concluded, is that speaking up about injustice isn't just about addressing individual incidents. It's about creating systemic change that prevents those incidents from happening to others. After the lecture, as the students and residents filed out, Maya noticed a young black woman lingering, seemingly wanting to speak privately. She appeared to be in her early 20s, perhaps a first-year medical student. Dr. Reynolds, my name is Zoe Thompson, she introduced herself. I was on that flight, SkyWest 937, 2 years ago. Maya's surprise must have shown on her face. I was across the aisle, 3 rows back. Zoe continued. I saw everything that happened to you and your niece. I recorded parts of it on my phone, though the other woman's videos are the ones that went viral. I remember there were several people recording, Maya acknowledged. It's nice to meet you, Zoe, though I wish it had been under better circumstances. Zoe nodded, then shared something unexpected. That incident changed my life. Dr. Reynolds, I was pre-law at the time, planning to become a corporate attorney. But watching how you handled that situation, your calm, your precision, your refusal to let injustice slide, it made me reconsider everything. In what way? Maya asked, intrigued. I realized I wanted to use my legal education to address discrimination and inequality, not to help corporations navigate around regulations. Zoe explained. I switched my focus to civil rights law and health policy. And then last year, when I read about your work on healthcare equity, I decided to apply to medical school instead. Maya was touched by the young woman's candor. That's quite a journey. I want to do what you do, combine medical expertise with advocacy to create systemic change, Zoe said earnestly. Watching you that day showed me what quiet, methodical power looks like in the face of injustice. It was a masterclass in effective advocacy. As Maya reflected on Zoe's words later that evening, she was struck by the unexpected ripple effects of that difficult day. The incident had not only led to reforms within SkyWest and other airlines, but had also influenced at least one young woman's entire career path. When she picked Amara up from science camp that afternoon, Maya shared the encounter with her niece. Remember that flight to San Francisco 2 years ago? When we had the trouble with our seats, Amara, now 11 and increasingly sophisticated in her understanding of the world, nodded. When that lady and the flight attendants were racist to us, Maya appreciated her niece's directness. They had many honest conversations about race and discrimination over the past 2 years, and Maya had stopped shielding Amara from these realities, focusing instead on empowering her to recognize and respond to them. Yes, that one. I met a woman today who was on that flight with us, Maya explained. She was in medical school now, and she told me that watching how I handled the situation changed her entire career path. She had been planning to become a corporate lawyer, but after seeing what happened, she decided to focus on civil rights and healthcare advocacy instead. Amara's eyes widened. So what we did helped change someone else too. It seems that way, Maya replied with a smile. Sometimes we don't know how our actions will affect others. We were just trying to stand up for ourselves, but it ended up inspiring someone else to rethink her whole life. Amara considered this for a moment, her expression thoughtful beyond her years. That's kind of amazing, isn't it? Like dropping a stone in water and watching the ripples spread? That's exactly right, Maya agreed, impressed by Amara's metaphor. And that's why it's so important to stand up for what's right, even when it's difficult. You never know how far the ripples will travel. That evening, Maya received an email from Elena Ramirez at the Passenger Advocacy Office. The quarterly report showed continued progress across all metrics. Passenger satisfaction scores were at historic highs. Complaint rates continued to decrease, and SkyWest had become an industry leader in equitable customer service practices. Most significantly, other major airlines had begun implementing their own versions of the Passenger Advocacy Office. The ripple effect of the incident continued to spread across the industry, changing how airlines approached issues of bias and discrimination. After putting Amara to bed, Maya sat on her balcony overlooking the Chicago skyline. She thought about how a single incident, painful as it was, had sparked changes that were now benefiting thousands of travelers who would never know her name or Amara's. She recalled her father's words, "One person can make a difference." It wasn't just about having the courage to speak up. It was about having the persistence to follow through, to document meticulously, to demand accountability, and to insist on systemic rather than symbolic change. The ultimate success wasn't measured in corporate policy changes or social media attention. It was measured in the confidence Amara now carried with her, in her certainty that she deserved to take up space in the world. It was measured in the career path of a young woman like Zoe Thompson, who had witnessed injustice and decided to dedicate her life to fighting it. And perhaps most importantly, it was measured in all the incidents that would never happen because systems had changed, training had improved, and accountability mechanisms were now in place. 1 month later, Maya received a letter from Victoria Whitfield. The envelope arrived at her office with no return address, but the handwriting was elegant and precise. Maya almost discarded it without opening it, but something made her pause. Inside was a single page of heavy stationery. Reynolds, 2 years ago, I behaved inexcusably toward you and your niece on SkyWest Flight 937. My actions that day have haunted me ever since. When the videos went viral and I saw myself through others' eyes, I was forced to confront an ugliness within myself that I had long denied. After being banned from SkyWest, I underwent therapy and extensive diversity training. I learned that my sense of entitlement was deeply rooted in bias I had never acknowledged. The incident cost me friendships, business relationships, and most importantly, my self-respect. I want you to know that your dignity in the face of my cruelty became a powerful lesson for me. I don't expect forgiveness, nor do I deserve it, but I wanted you to know that your stand that day changed more than just an airline's policies. It changed at least one person who needed to change. With sincere regret, Victoria Whitfield. Maya read the letter twice, surprised by the unexpected closure it provided. She had no desire to reconnect with Victoria or to offer easy absolution, but there was something powerful in knowing that the incident had prompted genuine self-reflection rather than just defensive anger. The final ripple came 6 months later, when Maya was invited to give the keynote address at a national conference on equity in transportation. Standing at the podium, looking out at representatives from airlines, railways, bus companies, and rideshare services, she reflected on how far things had come since that day on Flight 937. 2.5 years ago, my 9-year-old niece asked me a question that broke my heart. Maya began. She asked if we had to give up our seats because she was brown. Today, because of changes that began with that painful incident, fewer children will have to ask that question. As she outlined the transformation that had occurred at SkyWest and was now spreading throughout the transportation industry, new training protocols, accountability mechanisms, advocacy offices, and clear policies that protected the dignity of every passenger. The most powerful tool we have against discrimination isn't outrage, though that has its place, she told the audience. It's methodical documentation, strategic advocacy, and an unwavering insistence on systemic change. When we transform systems, we transform experiences. When we transform experiences, we transform lives. As she concluded her speech to enthusiastic applause, Maya thought of Amara, now almost 12. preparing for her first solo science competition the following week. The confidence with which she approached challenges, the certainty with which she claimed her space in the world, these were the true measures of victory. The incident on Flight 937 had been a moment of injustice, painful and infuriating, but its aftermath had become something else entirely, a catalyst for change that continued to ripple outward, touching lives that Maya and Amara would never know. And that, perhaps, was the most powerful lesson of all, that standing up for your dignity in one moment could help secure dignity for countless others in moments yet to come. A child told to switch seats, a flight crew frozen when they hear her last name. It's a story that reminds us how one person standing firm can create ripples of change far beyond what they could imagine. When we face discrimination, we have choices: to accept it quietly or to document it methodically and demand accountability. Sometimes the most powerful advocacy isn't loud confrontation, but calm, persistent documentation, and a refusal to let injustice slide. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories of everyday courage and transformation. Share it with someone who needs a reminder that their dignity matters and that one person truly can make a difference. The journey toward justice begins with a single voice willing to speak truth to power. Perhaps that voice is yours.